box to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It is 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. Oil for delivery in May is trading below $0 a barrel, but rebounding from prices as low as negative $55. Traders drew massive losses to avoid taking actual delivery of oil, pushing prices into negative territory for the first time. Dennis Gartman is an economist and former publisher of the Gartman Letter.
We probably will not see this again in my lifetime, but it is a reflection of how oversupplied the market is, how weak demand is, and how tight the term structure has gotten.
Well, the collapse in prices shows just how much value oil is losing as oversupply overwhelms storage facilities. Contract for West Texas Intermediate delivered in May expires today. Right now it's trading at negative $10 even. Price for oil delivered in June is also cratering at $16.20. Brent crude is trading near its lowest level in 18 years, right now at $21.19 a barrel.
The negative price action has Texas considering OPEC-style production cuts. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the details. Good morning, John.
Karen, the main energy regulator in Texas is meeting today to consider limiting output in a process known as pro-rationing. The proposal was considered a fringe idea a little more than a month ago, but this week's meltdown in prices makes it at least a possibility. Small producers want a cut of 20%, which would amount to more than 1 million barrels a day. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thanks. The White House is also weighing in on the route. President Trump is looking to use record low prices to add to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
We're looking to put as much as 75 million barrels into the reserves themselves. That would top it out. That would be first time in a long time it's been topped out. We'd get it for the right price.
And with prices so low, the president also says he'll consider blocking oil imports from Saudi Arabia.
Meantime, the White House continues the push to reopen the economy. Vice President Mike Pence is reassuring the public on the availability of COVID-19 testing.
We have enough testing capacity today for every state in America to go to phase 1.
Governors say they still lack supplies like swabs needed to diagnose those with the disease. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo meets with President Trump in Washington today. The two have frequently sparred over the federal approach to the pandemic. S&P futures are lower, down 37 points this morning. Dow futures down 414. NASDAQ futures down 68. The DAX in Germany is down 2.7%. And the 10-year Treasury is up 9/32. The yield 0.57%. Yield on the 2-year 0.19%. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
All right, thank you, Karen. It's 6:33 on Wall Street. Now let's bring in Michael Barr for more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. President Trump said he'll sign an executive order temporarily suspending immigration into the U.S. as the country tries to contain the spread of the coronavirus. President Trump made the announcement in a tweet late last night. The president says that he made the decision in light of the attack from the invisible enemy, as well as the need to protect the jobs of our great American citizens. Congressional leaders are on the brink of a deal to bring a nearly $500 billion stimulus bill to small businesses, less than a week after the Paycheck Protection Program ran out of funds. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says COVID-19 cases in his state are slowing.
This is one of our most important positive indicators. It means that our healthcare system is in a better position to be able to get ahead and stay ahead.
Murphy cautioned there is still concern as the statewide cases total over 88,000. New Jersey Senate President Stephen Sweeney is preparing for the layoffs of as many as tens of thousands of state and local government employees. Sweeney is proposing a bill to ensure they will be able to qualify for the enhanced unemployment benefits. The World Health Organization said today that rushing to ease coronavirus restrictions will likely lead to a resurgence of the illness. The warning comes as governments start rolling out plans to get their economies up and running again. Some protesters are calling for the reopening of the country. Matthew Bellis is a Lancaster County resident who organized a rally in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He spoke to ABC.
There are things that we need to do to enact policies to take care of this virus. But a complete and general lockdown of a state to hamper the economy could do far more harm than it does good.
Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is standing firm on stay-at-home orders in her city, telling people now is not the time to start venturing outside. She criticized others who are starting to reopen public spaces.
Now, I watched the governor of Florida, I think, fumble once again. His leadership has been wholly lacking in this pandemic. And then he reopened the beaches. God help us all.
The U.S. is seeking details about Kim Jong-un's health. U.S. officials say this is after receiving information that the North Korean leader was in critical condition after undergoing cardiovascular surgery last week. The South Korean government says no unusual activity has been detected in North Korea. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Thank you, Michael. We're coming up to 6:36 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John?
All right, Nathan. Jets General Manager Joe Douglas answered draft questions yesterday. Jets have the 11th pick on Thursday. He also had to answer why his best player, safety Jamal Adams, is upset with the team. Adams will be going into his fourth season. That's often a time a team will talk about a contract extension. The Jets have not spoken with Adams. Douglas said he will try to after the draft. Adams was upset last fall when his name was mentioned in trade rumors. Mets certainly not going to trade Pete Alonso after his historic rookie season. Alonso was on ESPN. While many have reacted negatively to the idea of playing an entire season in Phoenix, the always upbeat Alonso is on board.
Well, for me, I would like it because you would have all of us in the same area. You would cut down on travel, which would limit outside exposure. And for me, I was lucky enough to play in the Arizona Fall League, and it would just be like a big league version of the Arizona Fall League. And for me, I would be a fan of it.
Also from baseball, Derek Jeter, part owner of the Marlins, also runs the team, so he gets a salary, $5 million a year. He's foregoing it during the pandemic. Mike Curtis died at 77, former star linebacker for the Baltimore Colts. He made a famous tackle in 1971. He brought down a fan who had run onto the field. April 21st, this date in sports history, 1951, Game 7 NBA Finals. The Rochester Royals won the title. They beat the Knicks 79-75. First of 3 straight years where the Knicks would lose in the finals. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
John, thank you. It is 6:37 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Maybe a 24% yield was right for junk energy bonds. I'm Brian Chapata, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. At one point last week, traders who bought high-yield energy bonds during the darkest days of the market sell-off had to be nothing short of giddy at their good fortune. In just 3 weeks, the debt had surged more than 30%. Those yield hunters might want to book their gains and run, judging by the latest swings in the oil markets. West Texas Intermediate crude fell more than 90% on Monday to almost $0 a barrel, the biggest one-day drop since the contract began trading in 1983. A fast-growing glut of oil is causing traders to shift their positions so they don't have to take deliveries of cargoes given the lack of space to store them. This unprecedented move serves as a reminder that sometimes bonds can look cheap for a reason. Many vulnerable energy companies won't make it out of this period. The latest lurch lower in oil prices suggests the peak yield of 24% for high-yield energy bonds might have been the right level after all. If anything, maybe it was too low. I'm Brian Chapata. For more opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
Hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. Just before 6:39 on Wall Street, time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
This is the Bloomberg Green Business Report. The skies over Central Europe have been gin clear. I'll pause a moment so you can conjure up that image. It's due in large part to the coronavirus, as lockdowns slash electricity demand, cutting smog and boosting output from renewables, which have priority over fossil fuels, in feeding into the grid. Germany's solar panels are producing record amounts of electricity, with hardly a cloud over the country, helping photovoltaic plants produce 32,227 megawatts on Monday, beating the previous record on March 23rd. The sunny conditions meant solar generated as much as 40% of Germany's power, compared to the 22% produced by coal and nuclear. Solar, wind, and other renewables accounted for 78% of Germany's electric output. The country's Federal Weather Service forecasts bright conditions continuing this week. In a sense, coal is a victim of the coronavirus, as renewable energy gets cheaper and coal power is increasingly unprofitable. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
All right, Bob, thanks. Coming up today, we get earnings from Netflix. The company reports after the close of U.S. trading. And here with more is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
While it's been hard times for most media companies amid the COVID-19 outbreak, Netflix has prospered. Data from Sensor Tower reveal more than 7 million global downloads during the quarter, up 16% from a year ago. That would be 37% ahead of company guidance, according to Bloomberg Intelligence. Production halts resulting from the pandemic are also expected to slow the company's cash burn this year. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Larry, thank you. Finally, another major event has been canceled due to the pandemic. Munich's famed Oktoberfest Folk and Beer Festival, which has been around since 1810, is going to be put off. The event was due to take place between September and October, brings in around $1.3 billion for local businesses. This is Bloomberg.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
This is a blue. Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
This is a message from the government. Coronavirus is a national emergency. Life-threatening for people of all ages everywhere in the UK. To help save lives, stay home. Only go outside for food, health reasons, daily exercise, or to work. But only if you cannot work from home. Stay home. Anyone can get it, and anyone can spread it. Coronavirus. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to National Lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
When we're stuck indoors all day, we might find our energy bills creeping up uninvited. The cheeky rascals. And none of us need that right now. But by simply switching your energy with Money Supermarket, you could save £280 on your bills. It's just one small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
Stay in touch with your loved ones with great phones at great prices from Tesco Mobile. Like the incredible iPhone 7 with advanced HD front camera. Perfect for video calling. For just $13.99 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 14th of June. Was £15.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
News and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, coronavirus update. The Trump administration and congressional leaders insist a final deal is in reach on an aid package for small businesses that could exceed $450 billion. But both sides have been struggling for days to push an agreement across the finish line. President Trump says he hopes to see a Senate vote today. Additional help would be given to hospitals and billions more spent to boost testing for the virus. New York nurses sue.
The lawsuit filed against New York State's Health Department, Montefiore Medical Center in the Bronx, and the Westchester Medical Center alleges that they failed to have adequate personal protective equipment for the staff, and it caused coronavirus to spread. The New York State Nurses Association claims that nurses who became sick weren't given enough time to recover before having to return to work.
There's Steve Kastenbaum reporting from New York. I'm John Trout.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
Is that good for American finance?
What is happening with the head count?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are falling this morning alongside European shares as uncertainty about the health of North Korea's dictator introduces more unease into markets that have been roiled by the ongoing oil collapse and the coronavirus pandemic. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 34 points. Dow futures down 374. NASDAQ futures down 65. The DAX in Germany's down 2.5%. 10-year Treasury up 9/32. Yield 0.57%. Yield on the 2-year 0.19%. West Texas Intermediate remaining in focus after May contracts expiring today, plunged at the start of the week, taking crude below zero for the first time in history. And taking a look at NYMEX crude oil for May delivery, it's at minus $6.30 a barrel. The June contract at $16.72, and Brent is at $21.59. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Thank you very much, Karen. President Trump says he'll suspend immigration to the U.S. over coronavirus concerns. The president, in a tweet late last night, says he will sign an executive order. He did not offer specifics such as the time frame or the scope of who would be affected. The South Korean government says there are no signs of unusual activity detected in North Korea after reports describing leader Kim Jong-un was in grave danger after heart surgery. Speculation often surfaces about North Korea's leadership based on attendance at most important state events. Kim missed the celebration of his late grandfather on April 15th, the country's most important holiday. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios, where it's just before 6:49 on Wall Street. Time to check what's going on in D.C. now. Some of the top stories there include the Senate voting as soon as today on another $500 billion in coronavirus stimulus. The Treasury Department handing out almost $3 billion to airlines in their first round of payroll assistance. And President Trump meeting later today with Andrew Cuomo for the first time since the coronavirus response put New York's governor in a national spotlight. Also making news, as Michael mentioned, the president saying he will sign an executive order to suspend immigration to contain the coronavirus. Let's bring in now Bloomberg U.S. politics editor Kathleen Hunter. So, Kate, we got this announcement, as we often do, in a late-night tweet from the president. Do we know what led up to this, what the president's working at here with this immigration focus now?
Well, I think that, broadly speaking, what's led up to it, Nathan, is a real push, on the part of the federal government and the Trump administration and the White House in particular to try to get the U.S. economy up and running, get businesses and, transportation back, unshuttered. And I think that this focus on immigration is a part of that, in the sense that the Trump administration has always characterized, the president himself has always characterized this as, a foreign threat, a foreign virus, and throughout, going back to the early days of the epidemic. And so I think that, by trying to shut down immigration now to the U.S., that's a way to kind of provide some political cover potentially as things do start to reopen.
Yeah, you do sort of have to wonder how much politics is at play in an announcement like this, particularly when Canada and Mexico, the borders there, have already tightened up significantly in the midst of the pandemic. And the overwhelming consensus in the scientific community that at this point, the virus is spreading. It doesn't it seemed to make much sense to talk about closing the borders further when we already have a pandemic in this country.
Well, yeah, I mean, the U.S. at this stage is really, I think, widely viewed as kind of the epicenter now of the pandemic. And so the idea that the threat would be outside the U.S. borders, I don't think is necessarily substantiated by science or the facts on the ground. If in fact there are some facts that back that up, we certainly haven't really seen them yet from the White House. And so I think it'll be interesting to see what the scope of this is and, what specifically the president's talking about. As you noted, he did make this announcement in a tweet last night, which has become common for him, but doesn't necessarily allow for a lot of the policy specifics to be filled in. And so certainly people are going to have questions today. It'll be interesting to see what exactly is entailed in this. But I do think there is certainly a political component involved.
It'll be interesting as well to watch what comes out of this meeting coming up this afternoon with the president and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo at a time when Vice President Pence is saying that there's enough testing capacity in the country for many states to think about reopening. And we're seeing some states, particularly in the South, already are making moves to reopen.
Yeah, we saw the Georgia governor taking some steps towards reopening, for example, there. I think that certainly in a state like New York that's been harder hit, it's probably going to be a much slower reopening process. But I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of both what comes out of the meeting with Trump and Cuomo today in terms of any kind of, policy dictate or any movement on that front in terms of the PPE or in terms of reopening. And then also just, these have been two important figures in the, response in the minds of the public to this whole episode. And I think that, they haven't always been completely uncritical of each other. So I think having the two of them meet in person, what the sort of tone and tenor of that meeting is, I think will be interesting to watch as well.
And possibly while this meeting is happening, we could get a vote in the Senate as soon as today on more aid for the small business package. And now, as Democrats have been pushing for state and local government assistance and money for hospitals as well.
That's right. So really the tension here overall between Republicans and Democrats has been the Republicans' primary focus has been on the small business programs, whereas Democrats have wanted this additional funding for other priorities, including hospitals, as you mentioned. And so Democrats did a few days ago secure some additional funding as part of the deal. And so that seems to have kind of at least begun to clear the way for votes potentially this week in both chambers on the next round of stimulus, which I think, both Republicans and Democrats want to be able to say, look, we're taking action here. We're not sitting on our hands. The small business program in particular was tapped out after less than 2 weeks. So, replenishing that is certainly something that both sides are going to be looking to do as quickly as possible.
In our last 30 seconds here, let's talk about the funding that Joe Biden has secured in the 2020 presidential race. He just reported his biggest fundraising haul yet.
He did, and I think that, he certainly is helped by, the trio of endorsements that he got last week from Barack Obama, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren. I think that, it's not surprising to anyone that there was a big uptick, but that certainly is good news for him. The question, though, is whether he's still able to recover or regain some of the ground that he, doesn't have against Trump. Trump certainly is still outmatching him fundraising-wise.
Bloomberg U.S. Politics Editor Kathleen Hunter, thank you as always. Karen?
Nathan, thank you. It is 6:54 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report with John Tucker. Good morning again, John.
And good morning, Karen. Small business has been hit hard by the COVID-19 outbreak. So has the travel industry. Just imagine how Alex Kutin's company is doing. He owns and operates a small travel agency called Travel Leaders Indy. And Alex, I imagine the impact on your business has been pretty profound. Tell us exactly what you're going through.
Business, prior to COVID-19 was robust. I mean, real robust. What happened is it stopped. People said, not going, can't go. So what they did is they rebooked. So there we are. We're in the midst of, not only just canceling one trip, we're also, putting the effort in to get them booked for a later date. Our revenue is off by about 85%.
So what are you going to do without that revenue? This is a business that you started up in retirement, so you got a little better cushion?
Well, I did before the stock market went down.
You're taking it on all fronts, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I really am. And, as a small business owner, we're the last to get paid club. We pay our rent, we pay our employees, we pay, everything that we owe. And then if there's anything left at the end of the year, we get paid. And this year, I don't look to be making any money.
Now, have you applied for aid?
Yes, during the time that the CARES Act, $10,000, that we were led to believe that we would receive, we applied for that immediately. Did I get it? No. And then the PPP, whenever that program was announced and it came out, I applied immediately for that. And did I get it? No.
Well, have you gotten any update?
I got an email last night that the bank wanted me to reapply. And so this morning I came in to reapply. But I don't know if I'll get it or not.
It must keep you up at night wondering whether or not people will actually pick up travel again.
That's true, too. Of course, whenever somebody gets married, they're going to take a honeymoon most of the time. As long as that the countries that they want to go to are open. That's another question, too. What's happening in Europe? What's happening in Italy? Italy is our number one destination that we sell and send people to.
All right, up against the clock there, Alex Kutin. He and his wife own the Travel Leaders Indy Travel Agency in Indianapolis, Indiana. Alex, thanks for joining us, and keep us posted on that second application. We're going to continue bringing you stories of small businesses in the face of this pandemic every day at this time, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm John Tucker. That's the Bloomberg Small Business Report. Karen, back to you.
All right, John Tucker, thank you. We continue to watch shares of Coca-Cola up 1% this morning after first quarter results were better than feared. And we continue to watch the oil markets as well. Of course, NYMEX crude oil for May delivery is still trading in negative territory at minus $7.13 a barrel. And the June contract is at $16.56 this morning. Bloomberg Surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Sherry Ann.
Joining us now is Wealth Enhancement Advisory Services Executive VP and CIO, Jim Kan. Jim, great to have you with us. What was interesting in today's session was the divergence that we saw in the markets. We had the price of oil collapse, but at the same time, really not a lot of movement when it comes to the U.S. stock markets or the Treasury markets. Why are we seeing such divergence in the markets, and will this continue?
It's pretty dramatic anytime you see the people paying to actually offload their oil, right? So when you see a negative price for oil, it means that in order to deliver that oil, you actually had to pay someone to take it. The headlines were obviously very sort of interesting around that phenomenon, but it didn't really affect the overall curve. So if you look at June, July, if you look at deliveries further out, the curve didn't shift quite as much. So what that tells you is it's mainly a technical situation affecting sort of delivery into May. And so some of the issues are they're running out of storage at Cushing. So oil in the United States, just the WTI crude is based off of delivery in Cushing, Oklahoma. They're physically running out of places to put the oil. So I told a friend today if they had a tanker and a swimming pool, they could go down there and get paid, $25 to take the oil, put it in their swimming pool, and sell it in June and make almost a $45 spread.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listing.
Business is like a puzzle. Can you make a call given the data?
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
In this cycle, we've dealt with a lot of shocks.
It's important to understand what the Fed can and cannot do.
Finance.
There's no asymmetry left in markets. It truly is a zero-sum game.
We will get slower growth. I mean, let's not get confused about that.
Investment.
Very few investors want to own any energy to begin with.
There's a great deal of uncertainty. People are trying to hide in safe places.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, crude oil plunging as storage quickly fills worldwide. Congressional leaders on the brink of a $500 billion deal. And looking ahead to earnings, Netflix reporting after the close. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, hello Tuesday. Here is your Tuesday morning price action. Equities at session lows down 34 points on the S&P 500. We are negative 1.21%. Another morning of risk aversion we face this Tuesday. Treasuries with a bid. Yields lower by 3 basis points on a 10-year to 0.57%. In foreign exchange, I'll just bring you a quick snapshot of G10. The yen is where some of the underperformance is. The dollar, looking at the strength of the dollar against things like the Norwegian kroner, absolutely unbelievable to see the commodity currencies get really smacked around. So the yen strength is a story for you. Dollar yen coming in by around about 0.2%, but commodity currencies absolutely battered. If you want to look at the commodity story, it's in crude oil. Lots of talk about the May contract turning negative. The volume goes through the June contract, but June is getting battered as well. $16.70 on the June contract and down $3 or $4 on the session so far. So let's start the program by talking about oil, something that's been playing out in some physical markets in the United States for quite a while now. Very little demand for crude in a mandated shutdown of economic activity, and very few places left to store it, even if you do want it. Those issues today spreading deeper along the crude curve here in the United States and out into the Brent contract as well. These dynamics, I think, could be with us for a whole lot longer. That's what we're pricing today, and spread beyond the United States, so beyond WTI and into Brent. So today we need to get our hands around several issues. Is this just something that's going to be isolated to the oil market, or will it bleed more broadly into global markets? Tom Keene will be with us very shortly. I'm told he was up all night watching Tiger King ahead of Netflix earnings a little bit later, so he's well informed to talk about that company when we get those results. Lisa Abramowitz, I understand, is with us now. Lisa,
yes.
Fantastic to catch up with you. Let's begin with the epicenter of the global market story today, and it is in crude oil.
Yeah, yesterday a lot of people were dismissing the aberration of negative prices as being this forced selling in a less liquid contract. Today, though, you're seeing that price action continue and you're seeing storage capacity fill up around the world. My question is, John, how idiosyncratic is this to the United States? How much is this a case of shale producers pumping and not being able to put that anywhere? How much is this global, and how much is this a reflection of a disinflationary environment that the central banks cannot fight anymore, given how much ammunition they've already deployed.
Well, they could buy some barrels of crude, couldn't they? They could build out some storage capacity here in the United States.
I think President Trump's trying to do that, right?
Maybe Jay Powell would support that mission.
Maybe that'll be a new type of QE that is unprecedented. We have not heard of any discussions to that effect. However, there is a question of what this says about the economy. Has the price of oil gotten divorced as a sort of, gauge of global growth, or is this a really bearish indicator on what's to come?
No, this is the cleanest way of expressing what's happening in the global economy right now, in the here and now. Never mind the hope for the future. Yeah, this is the cleanest way of expressing it. There's no demand, and because there's been no demand, because demand has totally crashed, storage is quickly filled up, and as you breach storage capacity, crude rolls over aggressively. This is the cleanest gauge of where we are in this economy.
The question is, where do we go, right? I mean, does this basically get reversed? And here's sort of the question, and I was hashing this out with a number of people yesterday, which is, why did we not see negative prices on the June contract? Why did we not see even lower prices? What is to say that the dynamic's going to be so different come the roll then than it is now? And I think that that's a key question. A lot of people pushing back and saying, no, this is less liquid. Yet why do we think that there's going to be more storage next time around?
Well, June right now, $16.60 coming in aggressively. Tom, I was told last night you were up all night watching Tiger King just so you could prepare for Netflix earnings after the close. Are you enjoying that?
Yeah, I'm loving it. It's really good, and I figure if the Fed does another program, it'll be Jay Exotic leading the way. As well, we look for Netflix tonight, folks. We'll look coverage on that. Paul Sweeney with some really important perspective on that in the 9 o'clock hour, and then with Lisa later on in the morning. To me, the resounding reality, John, is Brent crude moved. I know you mentioned it there, but to be clear, this was a West Texas, Cushing, Oklahoma event yesterday. Brent was solid at $26 a barrel. And to see it come under the 23 level previously and now 21-ish is really, really key for me, that it's become a global reprice of oil.
Totally agree. That's been the story this morning. It's spread deeper through the WTI curve, and Brent has started to catch up with this move as well. Let's start the conversation of the morning, shall we? Greg Battle of BNP Paribas joins us now, the US head of equity and derivative strategy. Greg, fantastic to catch up with you, sir. The market, should it view what is happening in the commodity market as a story, a technical story isolated to crude, or a broader market story we need to pay attention to?
It absolutely has to be both. So for sure there's some idiosyncratic stuff to do with storage and the fact this is the front month and it's expiry. But the reality is, and you just touched on this, that we wouldn't be in this situation if demand wasn't zero. We've had this shutdown across the country that's going to see GDP plunge, unemployment skyrocket. And that's the fundamental reason why we're in this situation in the oil market. And that reads across to every other risky asset.
So there's a question, can equities in the United States rally if oil prices continue to go down? And I'm thinking about the thousands of jobs that are being lost, 9% of the workforce in the U.S. shale patch so far, just in March alone. What do you read in terms of a signal for U.S. stocks?
I don't think having the kind of capitulation that we've seen in oil can be viewed as anything other than unhealthy for kind of capital markets generally. What we've seen in U.S. equity markets, we had this extremely volatile crash that took the market down 35%, and we've now had a massive rally that I view as a bear market rally. I think history tells us, and we've had a long look across the history of crashes, that when you have a steep economic downturn, that is very rare for bear markets to last a month or two. They're typically much longer in duration, much more protracted.
Greg, part of this is wealth destruction. Just to look at the ETF fiasco, and Martin Ratz, John Farrell was just phenomenal with Morgan Stanley this morning, walking through the tangible ETF dynamics of oil. But Greg, what's so important here to me is people are going to lose money. How does the wealth destruction that we're seeing now fold into equity performance 6 months or 6 years down the road?
Yeah, there's absolutely an impact. So we're going to be hit by two things in equities. One is a wealth effect because of what's happening in capital markets generally. And the other is just quite simply what's happened in unemployment in the US and the strength of the economy. Both of these things are going to have a negative feedback loop that come back into equities. So yeah, I think we've got a really challenging period ahead of us.
You know, I want to go back to something that John was talking about earlier, how the price of oil is a very accurate gauge of where we are in an economy that's basically been shuttered, period, full stop. The question now is duration, right? And I think that that's sort of what we're seeing in the future contracts for oil. There is hope that the near future is going to be very different, or at least there will be more demand and a bit of more balance in the market. Greg, do you think that optimism is misplaced?
Well, I think you have to be careful having a lot of optimism that we're going to see a V-shaped recovery and everything reopen and go back to normal quickly. Now, clearly, we're very much hoping that we do start the path to normalcy and that this virus starts to dissipate and people can start to reopen businesses. Clearly, that's going to increase this incremental demand for things like crude from zero to something somewhat higher. But that doesn't mean that the state of the economy and the state of the markets going back to where they were several months ago in the next couple of months. Typically, the path to recovery is much slower and longer than the crash on the way down.
Well, Lisa, I think if you wanted a more constructive way of looking at what's happening on the screen today and yesterday, you could say this is the necessary pain we need to go through in the short term to rebalance the oil market in the medium to long term. Now, medium long term, pick a day, any day. I was talking to Amrita Sen of Energy Aspects yesterday about this. You're going out deep into 2021, into 2022. And if you think about the environment that this is going to have, this is generating this move at the moment. CapEx, not going to be much of that. You're going to really strip out supply capacity, build more storage because of what is happening as well. The dynamic that plays out today sets up a different crude world 2 years down the road.
I agree, John, but to me the fascinating thing is there was a story that Saudi Arabia is considering perhaps bringing forward the cuts that will go into effect in May to a little bit earlier, given the fact that we're seeing negative price contracts.
10 days matters in this world, right?
Absolutely, 10 days matters, but it shows the tone deafness, right? I mean, honestly, they're considering possibly doing this at a time when oil prices are falling to the floor. It just raises a question about, yes, there may be capacity and there might be production that's cut, but is this really a reality check? I mean, why wouldn't they cut it now?
No, I think they understand that there's very little they can do in this environment. We're talking about crude demand collapsing by 20, 30 million barrels a day through Q2. What can you do on the supply side? They can cut by 10 million. 10 million, that cut was really, really big in the grand scheme of things. But when you think about what's been happening with demand, it's just not big enough, nowhere near enough.
Yeah, if you look at international flights, for example, down 90%. In the past month.
Yeah, and potentially spilling over into May and June as well. Greg, great to catch up with you, sir. Always great to hear from you. Greg Battle there of BNP Paribas. So get you some news, some headlines worldwide. We can do that with Michael Barr this morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, John. Lisa, Tom. President Donald Trump said he will sign an executive order temporarily suspending immigration into the United States as the country tries to contain the spread of the coronavirus. President Trump made the announcement by tweet late last night and did not offer specifics such as the time frame or the scope of who would be affected. Many states are struggling to meet the demand for test kits. Maryland's Republican Governor Larry Hogan cut a deal with a lab in South Korea for 500,000 tests. Hogan also pointed out in a call with Vice President Pence and Dr. Deborah Birx that he didn't have access to federal labs that were on a state-by-state list offered by the White House.
You might want to go back and whoever's putting this list together, just pull out the ones that we don't actually have access to. But we appreciate you identifying the labs, and we're in contact with every one of them, so we appreciate it very much.
The president attacked Hogan, saying Hogan needed to get a little knowledge. President Trump insisted again that states have enough COVID-19 tests to begin the process of reopening the country. The president also touted a decrease in cases in some parts of the U.S.
Many of the areas hardest hit by the virus appear to have turned the corner. For example, recent deaths are down very, very substantially. You can compare that with their peak not so long ago.
The Trump administration and congressional leaders insist a final deal is in reach on an aid package for small businesses that could exceed $450 billion. President Trump says he hopes to see a Senate vote today. Most of the funding would go to replenish a payroll loan program that's out of money. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barser, thank you very much. We count you down to the opening bell, around about 2 hours away in New York City, with equity futures negative 1.5% on the S&P 500, near session lows, and down around about 42 points on a session so far. Tom, I know you've discussed it through the morning. The move in the June contract now on WTI, and the move in Brent too. It goes deeper, it spreads wider.
Yeah, they're both important, but the Brent, to me, it's become a global observation versus yesterday where it was so discreetly American. Brent crude 21.18, down 17.2%.
Unbelievable. Much more still to come. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Bloomberg's Lisa Abramowitz. This is
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Influential conversation.
Oh. Just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve.
Yeah, see ya.
Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung Rugged range.
Did you know that players of People's Postcode Lottery have raised over £500 million for charities and good causes? They've also won £47 million in prizes so far this year. And it could be your postcode next. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 23rd of April to play in the May draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus, conditions apply, play responsibly.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
It's 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are falling along with European shares as uncertainty about the health of North Korea's dictator introduced more unease into markets roiled by the ongoing oil collapse and the coronavirus pandemic. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down about 37 points. Dow futures down 416. NASDAQ futures down 67. The DAX in Germany's down 2.7%. 10-year Treasury up 9/30 seconds. Yield 0.57%. Yield on the 2-year 0.18%. West Texas Intermediate remaining in focus after May contracts expiring today plunged at the start of the week, taking crude below zero for the first time in history. Right now, the May contract is at negative $5.78 a barrel. Checking the June contract, it's at $16.40, and Brent is at $21.36 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 2.5% on $43 at $16.67.10 an ounce. The euro 1.0830 against the dollar. The yen is at 107.42. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. John.
Karen, thank you very much. Just after 10 p.m. last night, overnight, a tweet from the President of the United States, and very little clarity on what it actually means. This is what the President had to say. In light of the attack from the invisible enemy, as well as the need to protect the jobs of our great American citizens, I will be signing an executive order to temporarily suspend immigration into the United States. Tom, very, very little visibility on what that tweet actually means.
And in the reporting this morning of this late-night tweet, very clearly this was unilateral on the part of the president. Many of the cabinet authorities and officials did not know about this, or was certainly out of the blue. Our Kevin Cirilli provides perspective, our chief Washington correspondent. Kevin, there has to be a morning after for a late-night presidential tweet. What would you expect today of an implied executive order? Can he do that, and will he do that?
I mean, I think this is a very political tweet, right? I mean, this is an administration that has taken a hardline approach for immigration, even since the first campaign and whatnot. It's simple. I mean, I'll be really crystal clear here. Republicans and the president are banking during the re-election campaign that their slogan essentially will be reopen the economy, close the border. Reopen the economy, close the border. And that's what you're seeing happen right now and in terms of the messaging coming from the White House.
Kevin, I'm just struggling to get my head around this. For many people who are on a visa at the moment or thinking about getting a job in the United States of America, what does this all mean for companies that are trying to plan for the future over the next 12 months that might need some talent from abroad, from Europe, from Asia, from elsewhere? What do they do?
Well, they're not going anywhere for quite some time. I think in the sense, I had a source tell me yesterday during the day about all of the people who are still trying to get into the United States because they're in countries where the infrastructure doesn't even exist to tackle something like a global pandemic. And so the message from the White House last night in the late night tweet is, he doesn't want to see an influx in illegal immigration during this time.
Kevin, international flights have been reduced by 90%. Basically, travel is more abound at this point. What I'm trying to figure out, how much is this a distraction technique away from focus on the distribution of funding from small businesses and the pandemic and the response to it versus true policy that we need to look at and scrutinize in terms of its longer-term effects on businesses as well as social policy?
That's a great point. I think based upon the conversations that I have here in Washington, it's a largely political moment, and I think it's a way for the administration to have something else to talk about in terms of politics during this time in the mainstream fodder. So that's one. And then secondly, on the Paycheck Protection Program, that I'm told could be voted upon as early as today, if not the latest on Thursday.
Okay, so that is actually moving ahead, and there will be more funding, most likely approved in the very near term in order to get to small businesses. On the immigration question, previous efforts of President Trump to unilaterally ban or severely limit immigration have been challenged and successfully overturned in the court system. Is this basically the feeling right now that a similar type of overruling will occur in this case?
So, I'll have to get back to you in terms of the specifics, just because we don't have an executive order, Lisa, in terms of what he's actually
put
tweet
out. Yeah. Understood. Okay, carry on.
But I will say I will say that he's had Republicans and Democrats alike have had a mixed bag in the courts, as we all know, about certain rulings that have gone for each side. But I think from again, I mean, I think from a larger takeaway as we plan out this week of getting the small businesses approved, and then the immigration question, it allows, again, Republicans to talk about something else and to engage with Democrats on a different topic. And lastly, the one thing I have on my radar, I went to bed last night thinking this was going to be the main story, was Cuomo at the White House. And then, of course, you get the news on immigration and North Korea. But Cuomo at the White House today will be remarkable.
What will you expect to see of that? I mean, am I right that some people talk of him as a presumed vice presidential candidate with Vice President Biden?
Well, Biden said he's going to pick a female for that role, but I think the Cuomo narrative that they've been pushing is that the Cuomos are going to be involved in presidential Democratic politics beyond the 2020 election.
Oh.
Kevin, always great to get your thoughts.
Guys.
Kevin Cerrita joining us out of Washington. Guys, look, the easy response to the tweet overnight is something Lisa touched on. No one's getting on a flight anytime soon. Shutting down immigration temporarily, okay, in line with the fact that nobody is getting on a flight anytime soon. Is that going to make a difference? But I don't think we should be naive about what the future might have in store for us here. When we reopen these economies, and this is not just about the United States, it's worldwide, there is going to be a real reassessment about trade, supply chains, and immigration, and in a massive, massive way. And I think that's something we need to pay a lot more attention to.
Yeah, there's a plane flying across Central Park right now, John. It's like one of those beach planes over in the Jersey Shore, and it's got a big pennant behind it saying, "Save John." There it is. I mean, John, it's tangible. I mean, for you, it's like a real thing.
Like Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
Save Jonathan Ferro.
But John, it's like tangible. I mean, you're living this. I mean, you got a visa, and then what do you do?
I get sent back to London. Okay, I mean, it's not the end of the world. What I feel sorry for is a lot of people who work very, very hard all their life with a huge, huge dream, and that's to come to the United States and work. And I think that they should be thinking about ways to keep the door open for them.
Well, I will say, though, John, to your point about the supply chains and a deglobalization, I think that that's the issue. And that is something that is bipartisan. We're hearing that from a lot of different people saying we need to become more dependent on ourselves. And I think that that's what to look for going forward.
You see now Tom sort of set this up to send me back home.
Oh, no, I would never do that. No,
seriously?
The first time I've heard Tom come close to agreeing with the president. keep him out. From New York this morning.
Message and data rate may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water? NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve.
Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung rugged range.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Casting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, 2 hours away from the opening bell in New York. Equity futures on the S&P 500, negative 40 points and down around about 1.4, call it 1.5%. Outside of that, in the bond market, firmer treasuries yields lower by 3 basis points to 0.575%. The commodity currencies underperform in the FX market. The yen is where your outperformance is against the dollar, but at the epicenter of the price action, once again, a move in crude. Tom Keene, that sucking noise that you can hear is the front end of the crude curve and the June contract just zipping lower.
We sat yesterday afternoon, John in his abode, me in my abode, Javier Blas in his abode, and everybody else, and watched West Texas Intermediate collapse. That's Cushing, Oklahoma. We say good morning to all of you listening on Sirius XM from North Dakota on down to the Permian Basin. This morning, it's global. Brent crude comes in with a vengeance. To frame that right now, Brent crude 26.27 down to 21. The June West Texas Intermediate is $16 a barrel and still a negative statistic on a one-day remaining West Texas Intermediate. Our interview of the day on oil, Martin Rotz of Morgan Stanley. Martin, I want to cut to the chase and do the derivative ballet right now because I know John and Lisa have got some huge questions on oil and its future. There is a Greek letter called theta, which is the time decay of future. Given how odd things are now, do we see normal theta for June and July contracts, or do they collapse more rapidly because of the larger situation we're in?
Yeah, I'd be inclined to say I'd be inclined to say the latter. There's quite an interesting situation going on with the June and July futures at the moment. There has been huge inflows in oil ETFs over the last couple of weeks, and this is likely inflows from retail investors, other market participants that are trying to pick the bottom in oil, and then end up buying these oil ETFs. But what oil ETFs typically do, they buy relatively early month futures and then roll them close to expiry. Over the last few weeks, most of these ETFs have been rolling into the June and to a certain extent the July future. So they've had very, very significant support from these flows. Having said that, though, if you start to look at the actual supply-demand situation for oil, it's not so obvious that by the time those contracts expire, the storage situation around Cushing will be very different from what it is in May. And therefore, when ultimately the prices of these futures will need to connect to the physical reality, then they are likely to crack lower. And I think that is a dynamic that is broadly at play, in the sense that also this morning you're seeing the second month Brent future, which is the June future, and the July future also under renewed pressure again.
And Martin, that's what I want to discuss with you this morning. I think we're all interested in having that conversation. What is happening in the physical markets? And it's been taking place for a number of weeks now in the United States. As Tom pointed out at the start of this conversation, today it feels more global. The pain starts to spread to the Brent contract in a bigger way. Can you walk us through the individual dynamics of, say, the US crude market at the moment, just in terms of storage, and compare that to the nature of the logistical limits of, say, the international markets, which would shape the Brent contract?
Yeah, it's a good one. Look, frankly, this has become a very, very complicated and to a certain extent somewhat frustrating exercise. As in the past, typically when oil prices were lower, you would say, look, what is the high cost production? And could the countries that supply those higher cost barrels, could their production be at risk sooner than others? But at the moment, we're in a situation where there are so many logistical bottlenecks popping up pretty much in all of the major producing countries, whether on the whole we see them as low cost or high cost. We're simply running into these logistical issues. For example, Brazil sits relatively favorable on the global cost curve from a pure production cost perspective. But Brazilian oil tends to be what we call a long-haul crude. It's typically shipped to refineries in China and elsewhere in Asia over long distances. But with tanker rates going up so much, because we're using tankers to store oil offshore, there's huge demand for tankers. These transportation costs go higher and higher, which means that also Petrobras has now said that they will cut 200,000 barrels a day of production because of this dynamic. You have crudes in Russia, for example, or Nigeria, also a good example, which we on the whole do not regard as high-cost crudes, but both those countries have very little domestic storage capacity, for example. So they will be impacted. So rather than us being able to do a global analysis and say, oh, these are the high-cost producers, these are the low-cost producers, these will be more impacted, these will be less impacted, we now need to start analyzing these hyper-local situations around storage depots, around pipelines, connection to the seaborne market. And that is just a very nitty-gritty analysis that we're all trying to figure out as we speak.
Sure. And I think that is the story in oil right now. I was interested in the world's biggest independent oil storage company. The CFO said that they are quickly running out of space, and that from what he hears around the world, they're not the only ones. My question is, why is this dynamic going to change in June, July, or even August, when everybody says, yes, there may be a bit of a reopening, but the economy is not going to go back to normal for a long time? Martin, why will this dynamic change?
I think we might have lost Martin Ratz there, Morgan Stanley's global oil strategist.
I think he ran away.
Lisa's question just scared the hell out of him. Maybe we have to deal with this deep into summer.
Well, I mean, frankly, we should be talking about that, because a lot of people are pushing back and saying, no, this is near term. But what are you going to do? John, are you going to put some in your apartment?
Put it in Tom's.
I think Tom offered up a bedroom.
We were having fun yesterday, folks, after we all got up from the surveillance nap, and we had an oil tanker, and Lisa wouldn't take it, so we're deciding whether John and I would take the oil truck as well. Martin Ratz, I believe, is back with us, reconnected with Morgan Stanley as well. Martin, what's so important here is looking out to June and July. Explain why oil isn't like a virus lockdown. How does oil restart? Is it an easy thing to restart demand?
No, it's not an easy thing to restart demand. And the tricky thing is this. The restart in oil demand will likely be uneven across the products. So you would likely see some more driving before we start flying again. Now the issue is that if you put a barrel of crude oil in a refinery, typically you're going to get various products in a certain relatively predetermined mix. An individual refinery, once it's bought a certain crude, can flex a little bit, produce a bit more gasoline, a bit less jet fuel, but on the whole, less so. So if simply we are not going to be flying anytime soon, that creates all sorts of problems for refineries if we do need some of the gasoline demand. So the uneven nature of the restart of the economy is a challenging one for the oil industry.
Yeah. Fascinating. Martin, thank you so much for joining Bloomberg Surveillance this morning. Here again, folks, with Brent coming in like West Texas Intermediate yesterday. Mr. Ratz is with Morgan Stanley. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report, always brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, offering an MBA that provides STEM professionals with a technology-focused experience. Learn more at njit.edu/MBA. Here's Bob Boone.
Tom, Jonathan, Lisa, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. There have been wacky beliefs and conspiracy theories focused on wireless communications before, but this may be the wackiest yet. Conspiracy theories linking new 5G mobile networks and the coronavirus pandemic are fueling arson attacks on cell towers across Europe. The global spread of the virus at the same time countries were rolling out fifth-generation wireless technology has convinced some people to spread the false claims on Facebook and other social media sites. Some 50 fires targeting cell towers and other equipment have been reported in Britain this month, leading to 3 arrests. Similar attacks have been reported in the Netherlands, Ireland, Cyprus, and Belgium. Officials in Europe and the U.S. are watching the situation closely and pushing back, including the medical director of England's National Health Service, Stephen Powis.
I'm absolutely outraged, absolutely disgusted that people would be taking action against the very infrastructure that we need to respond to this health emergency. It is absolute and utter rubbish, and I can't condemn it in stronger terms than that.
One threat posted to an anti-vaccine group on Facebook sought to link a picture of a burned tower to both cancer and COVID-19, warning, stop trying to make it happen or every poll and mobile store will end up like this one. The European Commission insists there is no geographic or any other correlation between the deployment of 5G and the outbreak of the virus. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Lisa, John?
Bob, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Let's get you some headlines, some news worldwide. Here's Michael Barr.
Thank you, John. Lisa, Tom. President Donald Trump said he will sign an executive order temporarily suspending immigration into the United States as the country tries to contain the spread of the coronavirus. The president tweeted late last night that he made the decision in light of the attack from the invisible enemy, as well as the need to protect the jobs of our great American citizens. A new Wall Street Journal NBC News poll finds that a majority of voters support changing election laws so that everyone can vote by mail during the pandemic. About 58% of voters in the survey said that they favor changing election laws permanently to allow voting by mail, while 39% oppose a permanent change. 1/4 of that group says mail-in voting should be allowed this November due to the virus. A new study out of Los Angeles County and the University of Southern California says the coronavirus may be much more widespread than has been generally thought. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has the story.
An estimated 320,000 adults in LA County may have been infected, and of course that would mean that the proportional death rate would be lower. Estimated that approximately 4.1% of the county's adult population of 8 million has antibodies to the virus. When adjusted for margin of error, the infection rate ranged from 2.8 to 5.6%. Dr. George Rutherford, though, an epidemiologist at the University of California, San Francisco, said a lot of coronavirus research results are being released prematurely. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
The South Korean government says Kim Jong-un appears to be handling North Korea's affairs as usual after unconfirmed rumors he had undergone heart surgery. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I just want to take the opportunity to give a huge shout out to our colleague, John Tucker, who has done some fantastic work covering the pain that some small businesses are going through at the moment. Every day, just before this show starts, he brings you a little segment with an interview, Tom, with a small business owner and the troubles that they're having getting access to capital, how they've had to adjust. And it really reveals just the difference of the small business experience versus the large cap right now.
You know, the uproar over Shake Shack yesterday and Ruth Chris's Steakhouse and all that.
And rightly.
I'm not disagreeing. Can we say that many small business people haven't gotten their checks yet? I think that's true, right?
I hope that we can change that, and I hope that when they top up the funds, whether it happens today or later this week, they can adjust the rules somewhat to make sure the money goes to where it needs to go, Tom.
Well, we will see. It's I guess legislation Wednesday. That's tomorrow.
Hopefully quickly. Here's your price action this Tuesday morning, 1 hour at around about 47 minutes away from the opening bell. We're down by 1.76%. We're negative 50 points on the S&P. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. The U.S. economic slump has slammed college budgets across the country, and it's only going to get worse if the football season, the largest source of sports revenue at most big schools, is scrapped or delayed this fall. Take Clemson, for instance, the only school to participate in each of the past 5 college football playoffs. At best, Clemson sees a revenue drop of about $7.5 million, a manageable hit on a sports budget that grew to $132 million last year. From there, administrators turn to more dire possibilities, a partially disrupted college football season, or in the worst case, one that doesn't happen at all. The money comes from 4 main revenue sources: ticket sales, donations, media rights, and licensing and marketing. Iowa State Athletic Director Jamie Pollard notably compared a year without football to the Ice Age. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Global News 20.
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve.
Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung rugged range.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
When we're stuck indoors all day, we might find our energy bills creeping up uninvited. The cheeky rascals. And none of us need that right now. But by simply switching your energy with Money Supermarket, you could save £280 on your bills. It's just one small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and we continue to watch West Texas Intermediate. It remains in focus after May contracts expiring today, plunged at the start of the week, taking crude below zero for the first time in history. Checking those May contracts, they're still negative. They're at minus $3.32 a barrel. The June contract is at $16.12 a barrel, and Brent is at $20.90. U.S. stock index futures are falling today. S&P futures down about 50 points. Dow futures down 562, and NASDAQ futures down 85. The DAX in Germany is down 3%. 10-year Treasury up 12/30 seconds, yield 0.56%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.19%, 0.19%. COMEX gold is down 2.2%, down $37 at $16 make that $1,674 an ounce. The euro 1.0834 against the dollar, the yen at 107.39. And Philip Morris International abandoned its 2020 earnings guidance as the coronavirus outbreak weighs on duty-free tobacco sales, while travelers faced a double whammy of natural disaster losses and virus-related charges during its first quarter. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. We should say it. It has been good to see the likes of governors in states like New York get along with the federal government and get things done. It has been good to see Secretary Mnuchin working with Democrats and getting things done. And today, the governor of New York, Tom, meeting with the President of the United States.
Yeah, in crisis, you really figure out who can do what. And I think everybody, Republicans and Democrats, would suggest the governor of New York has provided leadership. Part of that is he has an eclectic group around him, including our wonderful lieutenant governor from Buffalo, New York, joining us now. And what is so important about Kathy Hochul is she was originally way back a Democrat and a member of the Conservative Party as well. That is very cool and straddles the emotions of the time. Lieutenant Governor, what would you suggest your governor will say to the president today?
Well, as you mentioned, I think it's important for us to work with all of our partners, including the President of the United States. And what the governor is going to do is continue to make our case why places like New York State need the federal government's assistance to invoke the Defense Production Act and to help us with supply chains, because our way into recovery stems on us being able to have mass-scale, wide-scale testing so we know who've had the virus before so they can be the first to get back to work. But New York can't do this alone. We don't have the access to the chemicals that are necessary, the swabs, and the federal government, treating this as a national state of emergency, has the power to invoke, to deploy this so states like New York can move faster, because no one is more anxious to reopen our economy than the governor and myself. So that's what this conversation is about, but also continuing to ask for more money in the next stimulus plan, because states are taking on the chin. States like New York need more money.
And the conservatives are going to say, no, we don't want to do that. Where would that money go to? If you get $1 gajillion from Washington, where will it go?
Well, first of all, our revenues have gone down to a trickle. The state of New York is projecting to lose at least $15 billion in revenues in this budget year, which paralyzes our ability to continue to fund local governments and schools and hospitals and the many programs that are just part of living in New York. And that's our challenge. How we meet that, in addition to the exorbitant expenses that have accrued from combating this pandemic, the extra costs for PPE, protective equipment, of having to purchase ventilators at exorbitant prices because we are competing in a global market, and also just the healthcare workers, how we're reimbursing and supporting the hospitals to cover all these extraordinary costs. So we have more costs, we have less revenue. We are in a state of crisis in terms of our fiscal state, but our main focus right now is just saving people's lives and continuing to make the trend of new cases continue downward in hospitalization. So we're still in the middle of the heat of this, but very cognizant of the fact that the federal government, we hope, will understand why a place like New York, hardest hit place in the world, needs additional help from the feds to help us to just get back to some semblance of normal with respect to funding essential programs in the state of New York.
And Kathy, I was just looking at the unemployment trust fund balance in New York, which has been depleted by almost entirely, 50%, given from February through mid-April to fight the coronavirus's effects, namely people filing for unemployment. How much longer do you have before that's gone?
I don't have a date when that's going to run out, but you're absolutely right that there's tremendous stress on a system that, think about how we normally would handle maybe 50,000, even phone calls a week. That went from 50,000 to 10 million over a phenomenally short period of time. We have allocated now 3,100 people on the call lines. We've redone our website. We've tried to make the whole process of applying easier. But the problem is that there's a finite amount of money in that fund. And so you're absolutely right. This is just another area where New York State could see a shortfall. But the last thing we ever want to say to New Yorkers who've been hit hard and lost their job and are just reeling in disbelief of what situation has been wrought on their families, that we can't say to them there's not money for you to cover unemployment. So we will have to figure that out as well. And that's just another challenge on why federal assistance in the next stimulus, along with small businesses, along with our farmers and a lot of other entities, don't forget the $500 billion that Governor Cuomo and Republican Larry Hogan, the chair of the National Governors Association, are begging for. Just help us with this and help us get through this time.
Kathy, just real quick here. My older son said to me yesterday, do you think that in 6 months' time everything's going to be back to normal? And I said no. And he said, what about a year? What do you think?
A year would be nice. We don't know. I mean, we are dealing with the absolute unknown here. This is unprecedented. So for us as elected officials to try to figure out like a timeline, we're in the throes of a crisis. We want to see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're starting to see a glimmer of it, but we also just recognize that this is going to take some time. And in addition, what is normal going to look like? I mean, are people going to feel comfortable going into large venues and on the subway system and into their workplace? So I think the broad-based testing is going to be what gives people some level of comfort, but certainly a vaccination that is widely administered is what's going to give people the sense, like, I can go out, I'm going to be safe, my children are going to be fine, and now we'll start creeping back up to the old normal, which may be now an improved normal. We have an opportunity here to reimagine all of our delivery systems of services, transportation, healthcare. This is an opportunity that we've created a task force with elected officials, including Mayor of New York City, the county executives of Westchester, Nassau, and Suffolk, and I've asked them to help us reimagine the new economy going forward in New York. So that's important. But right. and I appreciate it. And you mentioned working together. I was a member of Congress, and so I saw gridlock firsthand. I know what dysfunction looks like, and I think what the governor is doing is creating an opportunity that wasn't there before. But I do want to correct one thing. I've been a lifelong member of the Democratic Party. The conservatives supported me as well as the Muslim Family Party way back when I was running for
a few years ago.
So,
okay.
I'm going to correct that record and say I'm a proud Democrat my entire life.
Very good. We got to leave it there. Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much. Kathy Hochul today with us. Please stay with us. Across this nation, this is Bloomberg Futures, more than negative. Dow Futures, negative 500. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Asset managers who sees change to look.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
TuneIn makes it easy to be a part of the conversation. Just make sure push notifications are enabled to hear about breaking news and trending topics from around the sports world. You'll also get custom recommendations of podcasts and radio stations covering the sports and teams you care about. Get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft with TuneIn.
Do your homework on this year's top prospects, rising stars, and late round sleepers with football podcasts like Move the Sticks.
Is my pick because I know he is an athletic freak, a guy that is capable of doing it all. He can blitz, he can run, he can cover.
And when the draft gets underway on April 23rd, follow every round and every pick for free.
In the 2018 NFL. It's always football season on TuneIn.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the Bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one, not only.
Catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. That's right. They can help save lives by simply washing their hands. Just 20 seconds of thorough hand washing after they've coughed or sneezed or been outside can help fight against the dastardly spread of germs. Armed with only soap and water and hands, your superhero can protect you, your family, and everyone out there in America land. Amazing! Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
Always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
We are being taken out of our comfort zone by the coronavirus.
Dollar weakness is pretty much a good thing for a lot of the rest of the world.
Finance.
We are going to see a global demand contraction this year, most likely, for oil. The financial health of the business sector has deteriorated somewhat.
Investment.
Obviously, the value in high-vol stocks are going to continue to suffer.
It looks as though the bond market is talking itself into a recession here.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrell, Lisa Abramowitz, and Tom Keene. Thank you for being with us after a most historic day yesterday in oil. It continues this morning. We see the continued churn in West Texas Intermediate with the June contract coming in a 16 level on that. We'll get to that in a moment. But what you need to know now, Global Wall Street, is Brent crude joins the drop in oil. An abrupt drop in Brent crude, down 17% with a 21 handle. We saw an 18 handle on Brent crude earlier this morning. Just absolutely extraordinary. So we've got much to talk about on oil, on these markets in general, and of course, the moment of this pandemic. Right now, though, Bloomberg Surveillance always brought to you by Cohn Resnick Advisory, Assurance Tax, for ideas to stabilize your business and find opportunity amid uncertainty. Visit the Cohn Resnick Coronavirus Resource Center at cohnresnick.com/COVID-19. And we always thank Cohn Resnick for their support. John, I mentioned the idea that the oil collapse has gone global, but it's much more than that. In every interview, it is our learning about demand and the effects of a sudden drop in demand.
Well, I think on the demand point, the broader market has accepted the demand shock associated with the crude price plunge. I think something we need to pay a bit more attention to is have we realised the price shock more broadly through markets? Because, Tom, for me, they're two different things.
Well, we've seen that, and corn coming in as well. Just good morning out in the Midwest, but corn having an extremely difficult week as well. Lisa, and this goes back to all the Fed action and, frankly, the bond guesstimates, which is of disinflation and deflation. The whole reinflation feel has sort of drifted away Friday and into this Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, here's the conundrum. If you look at break-even rates, you see they are above where they were at the March lows, but still very low, especially when you consider the trillions of dollars that the Federal Reserve and Congress are pumping into the economy, let alone the Bank of Japan and the ECB. The question is, what can central banks do further to ignite inflationary expectations at a time of such incredibly intense disinflationary tendencies?
We need an update. John Farrow with an update on the views of Lawrence Kudlow. You spoke to Larry Kudlow. Is he optimistic, John, that we can get this legislation in the next 48, 72,
I think they
or 200
use the word
hours?
Aspirational, hopeful, and certainly open to tweaking the rules as well. We've talked about the embarrassment of several big public companies getting access to funds that were set aside for small businesses. I hope we can change those rules. I think we can all acknowledge, though, Tom, when you act quickly, you will always leave cracks and space for things to go wrong. They had to act fast, and that was the uncomfortable downside we had to accept. Though I think every time you update this and top it up, you can tweak the rules a little bit. One thing that I've heard a lot about in the last 24 hours and haven't heard the administration on yet is whether they should actually just top it up. They should just leave it open-ended, this program, because so many people need access to this money, and quite clearly it's running out quicker than they can top it up.
And this is so important, Lisa. Before we go to our esteemed guest, Lisa, to me, what's so interesting here is the weekly ballet. We started out March guesstimating April. April drifts away. We're guesstimating May. And I would say in the last 2 business days, we're beginning to think about June. Lisa, when do we start thinking about July?
We have no concept, right? And I think that people were saying last week that if you look at stocks, they were pricing in some sort of resolution by July, some more certainty. If this continues beyond that, what's going to be the issue? I will say, John, to the point of small businesses and some of the ire about some of the publicly traded companies that have gotten money, is that even a problem? If they're using it in a prudent way to keep their employees on the payroll? Or is this just a matter of just not enough money being available to all businesses? I mean, honestly, I think this is an important debate, Tom.
No, it's a huge problem. It's a massive problem. No, it's not even the spirit of it, Tom. It's when you set policy with a specific set of objectives. Now, if you have a small business program, it's to help small businesses. There is a lot of help elsewhere available for public companies. Go tap the debt market if you're investment grade. The Fed's got your back. For a small business, the last thing we want in a mandated shutdown is to make small businesses compete against public companies which have a whole army of accountants behind them that can do this work for them. Because guess who's going to lose? The small business.
I think that's a key distinction, the public company idea of it, John. I had a heated conversation once over a beverage of my choice with William Dunkelberg of the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the people that really try to gauge small business mood. And I said to Bill Dunkelberg, I said, what's a small business? And it's not 1 or 20 or 30 people. It can be as high as hundreds and indeed 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people. But a publicly traded company, I agree with you, John, has a lot of advantages.
Well, I hope if they top up the funds a little bit later, either today or through the week, that we can tweak the rules just a little bit. We're going to continue the conversation on the crude fallout. We can do that with Jane Foley of Rabobank, the head of FX strategy. Jane, fantastic to catch up with you. There's a demand shock. The market, relative to where it was a month, 6 weeks ago, has become very comfortable, relatively speaking, with that demand shock. Then there is a price shock, like the one we saw with crude in the last 24 hours. Have we fully realized the risks associated with the price shock in the crude market?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to know with the crude market. Maybe we have. I think this is going to start panning out, of course, in other contracts. I think we've already begun to see that. But I think in terms of the demand shock, I don't think the market is yet necessarily comfortable with that, because I think we've only just begun to really get a glimpse of the demand shock. So, for instance, if we look at the economic data, we know that we've only just got the beginnings of the economic data that refer to the shutdown periods. If we think about unemployment, we know that unemployment is going to remain elevated for quite a long period of time. There's your demand shock coming all the way through. The demand is going to take quite a long time to get back to normal. And then we've got other issues. So, for instance, some countries I think are going to be different in terms of the demand shock to others. If we look at Australia, so the total amount of deaths in Australia linked to COVID-19 is just 72. If we link that and compare that to the US or Italy or Spain or the UK, where we've seen tens of thousands, clearly this is very different psychologically. So in Australia, it's quite likely when they start unwinding their shutdowns, which will happen from May the 11th, that people are going to feel more confident to go to the hairdressers, to go to the restaurant, to go to shops, etc. Here, you're going to have workers refusing to go to work. You're going to have people refusing to sit in restaurants, to sit in bars for a long time. So the demand shock, I think, is going to be, a work in progress. And this means that for commodities markets, the oil market, other commodities, it's difficult to really know exactly when the market is going to feel comfortable with that.
Although it does seem like it's a long way off, or at least months away, before we start to get a true revival in some of the major developed market economies. And given that, do you think that the market is accurately pricing in the potential of deflation?
No, I don't think it can. I think it's impossible to do anything accurately at the moment. I just don't think that there is enough data. I don't think there's enough modern experience to really gauge the extent of this crisis. But the deflation or the inflation is going to be interesting. We do have some clues to this. So, for instance, if we go back to the global financial crisis, and if we look at all of the quantitative easing that came after that, initially we had an awful lot of economists, an awful lot of commentators saying, oh, this is going to be hugely inflationary. And yet, look at wage inflation, look at CPI inflation. We never had that inflationary impact, but we did have it in asset prices. We had it in equity prices. In many countries, we had it in houses, we had it in classic cars, we had it in jewellery, etc. So the money did find its way, and that was quite interesting because that led to quite a lot of political upsets. A lot of countries voting for populist presidents or populist prime ministers wanting a change because they didn't like the inequality that went along with that. So there is a cost to bear, and not all of that is necessarily financial.
Jane Foley with Rabobank with us, with futures at negative 54. They deteriorate. Dow futures near negative 600, negative 584. And the VIX over 2 days, folks, has moved 8 big figures, 47.39 on the VIX. Yields come in with curve flattening as well. Jane, I want to go to the emerging markets where the real squeezes out to 5.32, not trading yet. Argentinian peso hyper managed out to a 66. Even Mexican peso weakens out. We're going to get a 7 on Turkish lira at some point today or tomorrow. These are signals of an ebbing away, a drifting away in so many EM currencies. When do they break?
Well, they will break, I think, when the global economy starts to recover, at least until we can accurately foresee when that recovery is. I mean, what you've just outlined in terms of what these emerging markets are doing really is the reverse of the dollar story. The dollar is strong because these markets are weak. And when we begin to see confidence re-emerging in these markets, that's when the dollar story, the dollar strength story, will break. So it's the other side of the coin. And I think it's going to be several months, really, before we begin to get there.
Jane, never enough time. Thank you so much. Jane Foley with us with Rabobank today. Just extraordinary. Her strong dollar call, resilient dollar call has really been industry leading. Right now with our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. President Trump says that he will sign an executive order suspending all immigration to the United States in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. A move like this would be absolutely unprecedented and would essentially shut down the legal immigration system. During the 1918 flu, more than 100,000 immigrants legally came into this country. The Trump administration declared the country has enough lab testing capacity for states to begin reopening their economies. But Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro tells us governors say they are struggling to obtain a key tool in the pandemic fight.
It took 22 days of nonstop negotiations for Maryland to acquire 500,000 coronavirus tests from a South Korean company. So lab capacity may help, but only if states can pull off what Maryland Governor Larry Hogan did, find the tests and the equipment necessary.
Some of the things that we still need help on from the federal government.
To track the virus and safely reopen offices and stores.
I know that some of my fellow governors are all out there working hard to find testing capabilities.
Some states reopening this week, a frustrating Administrator Hogan points to the White House's own guidelines. States are supposed to have 14 consecutive days of reduced coronavirus cases before relaxing restrictions. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
A pair of New Yorkers, one a Yankees fan, the other a Mets booster, want their money back. They filed a lawsuit demanding ticket refunds for games that have been called off because of the coronavirus. It's expected that Major League Baseball will offer credit toward tickets to games in 2021, but the plaintiffs say that given the circumstances, they'd rather have their money back. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Lisa, Tom.
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. In the markets, in earnings season, we're looking for guidance. Lisa, something you've been talking about the last couple of days, flying blind. Credit Suisse's Jonathan Golub with a note yesterday speaking to that. At the time of writing, of the 47 companies that reported to date, 9 had previously provided guidance. Of these, only 3 updated their projections, 6 withdrew. This is what Jonathan Golub's got to say, and I think this is interesting. The lack of guidance should leave estimates too high for future quarters, even after first quarter reports. Something to chew on.
That's really interesting. Basically, the sort of tendency to be hopeful on Wall Street, leaving probable expectations too high. I think this really is an important kind of consideration as we get the big tech earnings next week and Netflix after the bell.
Netflix after the close, a conversation coming up on this program. Ahead of the opening bell, 1 hour, 17 minutes away from the cash open this Tuesday morning. Session lows down by 1.9% on the S&P 500. We are down by 54 points. Some risk aversion for you. In the commodity market, crude is lower, the pain spreading through the crude curve in the United States and internationally.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Influential conversations from...
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve. Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung Rugged range.
Did you know that players of People's Postcode Lottery have raised over £500 million for charities and good causes? They've also won £47 million in prizes so far this year. And it could be your postcode next. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 23rd of April to play in the May draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus, conditions apply, play responsibly.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stock index futures are falling this morning along with European shares as uncertainty about the health of North Korea's dictator introduced more unease into markets already roiled by the ongoing oil collapse and the coronavirus pandemic. S&P futures are down 50 points, Dow futures down 546, NASDAQ futures down 83. The DAX in Germany is down 3 1/3%. 10-year Treasury up 17/30 seconds, yield 0.55%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil, we are watching it. It remains in focus after May contracts expiring today plunged at the start of the week, taking crude below zero for the first time in history. May contracts still in the negative. They're at minus $4.70 a barrel. June contracts at $15.68, and Brent is at $20.81. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. We know that Tom Keane's been watching Tiger King. Lisa Abramowitz, have you watched Tiger King on Netflix?
No, not yet. We are too busy watching really classic films like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Oh, wow. I'm not sure this is one for the kids, Tom. I don't know if this is one for the kids.
No, it's not appropriate. I watch it with Vet Bill, though. He's just old enough.
What did Vet Bill think?
Growls.
At the cats.
A lot of growling. No, not just the cats.
Bring in Michael Nathanson.
Yes.
I believe we've got him with us. Moffett-Nathanson founder, partner, and senior research analyst. Michael, quarantine streaming. Just talk to us about it.
Hey, John. Good morning. It's a perfect storm, right? It's a perfect storm. Streaming usage in the U.S. last week was up about 130% year over year. And Netflix is the king of streaming, so they're up about 150% year over year, right? You could not have come up with a better scenario for Netflix at this point in time. It's just insane.
What does it do to their profit? I mean, the idea of development costs are great and all that. They've had the mother of all good fortunes in this terrible crisis. Does it actually come down to EBITDA or operating income, some basic line of the accounting statement?
Yeah, so good question, Tom. And for the record, we've not recommended Netflix ever because of that question about profitability. But I would argue that this time is different, that slowing competition would probably mean that they could actually maybe start slowing down their own content spend, and you may see improvements in long-term profitability and margin because my media companies, the traditional companies, have got to react by slowing down their own spending, right? So this is going to just put a brake on new content, and Netflix should be able to tamp down their spending, which will flow into cash flow and better long-term profitability.
Michael, I'm looking right now, just to give you some perspective, the NASDAQ for the year to date is down 4.3%. Netflix shares are up 35%, trading at record highs or near record highs. How much of this scenario is already priced in versus potential for further gains?
Well, Lisa, great question. We've been saying that for a while, that, when the stock got above $300 a couple of years ago, we're like, look, you're on your own. And we were, we unfortunately missed the run, but we kept saying, here's what you have to believe to buy the stock. I think what's happening is there's just such a lack of certainty around people's long-term earnings power, right? We took numbers up on Netflix heading into this quarter. And as I wrote, only probably Clorox and Zoom and Amazon have numbers going up that much. So you're paying for certainty of earnings at a time when most companies have no clue what's going to happen the next 3 or 4 quarters, right? So you could say it's priced in. I think it's priced in because our price target's about $100 lower. But until you have certainty of earnings for the rest of this market, I understand what people are doing. Plus, the structural improvements to Netflix's position can't be underestimated, right? This is a great opportunity for them to take profit and take share and to really hurt their competition.
This is a defensive name in an environment like this, but I wonder what the cyclical test looks like as we reopen and people slowly start going to work. And we look at the economic backdrop, which is a really poor one. Michael, what I've been trying to understand is we've got 22 million people who in the last 4 weeks just applied for initial jobless claims or received the initial jobless claims in a process. There could be many, many more waiting to go through that process. Do you have a deep understanding of what that actually looks like with subscriptions, where they prioritize in the grand scheme of paying your bills on any given month?
Well, historically, John, those types of terrible unemployment data actually used to help pay TV, right? People were locked indoors, unemployed, and they would cancel their trips, and they basically would spend money on movie tickets, which were counter-cyclical, and pay TV. But our firm's feeling now is given the lack of live sports, which I know is tough for all of you, lack of live sports, lack of new content, the price of the bundle. We think what's going to happen is people will cut the cord and they will rest on OTT because it's a much more efficient use of their capital than paying for the bundle.
Is there a glut? I mean, when does this start getting sorted? I guess Peacock's come on and they have advertisements. I can't keep up with it. There's Hulu this, Hulu that. When do they start combining or drifting away?
Yeah, good question, Tom. The lack of new content will force them to realize, like there's some of those, like the Apple TVs they do not have enough shows. CBS All Access and Showtime probably need to slow down their spending because CBS Viacom's balance sheet isn't that strong. So I think this is also why Netflix is well positioned, because their competitors either don't have enough content, like Apple, or will have to slow down spending, like Viacom, CBS, to fix their balance sheet. Even Disney, will come out of this much more levered than they've ever been, and probably have to make some tough choices. So I think that's what people are looking at is the competition will have to reorganize and probably consolidate, which means the streaming war thesis was great for about 6 months, and now it's come to an end, basically.
Michael, just real quick here. Netflix has $13.5 billion in debt. They've been burning through cash for programming. People are expecting them to raise more money in debt markets as a result of their newfound glory in the stock market. Do you agree?
Yes, and one of the things I was waiting for was, a blow up in fixed income, thinking what's going to happen historically is when fixed income markets shut down, companies like Netflix will have to either become more conservative or realize that they can't keep funding their growth through cheap debt. But you guys know what's happened here, right? Debt's only gotten cheaper. So another perfect opportunity for them is that the cost of borrowing for them will come down over time, right? So no one is quibbling that they can borrow money as cheaply as they can. And that was one of the things we worried about. We thought the market would one day sell off and debt would become more expensive. And that's not going to happen anytime soon, right? So they can keep borrowing. And I think no one on the equity side is going to care very much.
Mike, always great to get your thoughts on a program. I hope you and the team are doing really well. Fantastic to catch up with you. Michael Nathanson there, weighing in on the latest with Netflix and the streaming wars. Tom, a headline just crossed in the Bloomberg, just to get everyone up to speed on it. It comes from Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, the senator saying, we have a deal, and he thinks we will pass the virus relief today. So we have a deal, and we could pass it today.
Yeah, and then we see what happens in the Senate. But, it seems like, this is Kevin McCarthy, John, the congressman from Bakersfield, who really got this jump started.
So it looks like we might have a deal down in Washington, D.C. Some encouraging news for you out there. Much more still to come right here on Bloomberg Radio. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro. Together with Lisa Bramage, this is...
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute.
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve. Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung rugged range.
Did you know that players of People's Postcode Lottery have raised over £500 million for charities and good causes? They've also won £47 million in prizes so far this year, and it could be your postcode next. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 23rd of April to play in the May draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus, conditions apply, play responsibly.
The garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18 plus.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance. For our audience worldwide, we're live on Bloomberg Radio, 60 minutes away from the opening bell in New York. A little bounce off the low, still down 46 points on the S&P 500, negative 1.65%. A headline crossing the Bloomberg from Senator Schumer saying a deal has been reached on interim stimulus. That is the good news down in Washington. But at the epicenter of the price action today, once again, is crude oil. Lower, down harder, through the curve, not just the May contract yesterday, but now the June contract, and internationally as well. Brent gets pulled into this, Tom. $20.52 on a Brent contract, down 20% on the day.
I suggest the Schumer headline lifted equities. We went from like a negative 52, negative 53 out to negative 47 on SPX futures. But John, on oil, let me frame that for you with a $20.56 Brent, negative 5 on NYMEX. That's the closing contract today. And we just went back under $16 on the June contract. John, what really gets my attention, obviously dollar and EM dynamics and that, is in the yield market. It's really far more ugly than all the attention, the lack of attention I've seen on bonds. A 2-year 0.1893. The 10-year really getting down near those February lows that we saw, 0.55. The yield in a solid 5 basis points on the 10-year. You look at the 30-year bond, John, 1.13.
I'd say look at the belly of the curve too, Tom. 5-year yield, all-time low, 32 basis points, 31 basis points. We don't refer to the belly.
We don't look at the belly.
How's the belly doing in the shutdown?
The gym is closed.
Record wide.
The day that the gym opens. I told Mrs. Keene, I said, never will I ever again appreciate the gym is closed. It's not a good thing. John, to know that it's open is a good feeling.
I love that gym too. It's a fantastic gym that you've got over there, Tom.
It is. Vet Bill and I go down and, he does cardio.
Can I
Lisa, they were the days, Lisa, when I used to go down to the gym and see Tom working out.
Wow. I'm going to leave that image right there. That's amazing. I will just say, I'm really struck by this headline. Schumer saying that an interim stimulus deal may be reached. Someone just messaged me saying, I've done everything right, hire young staff for my first job, pay taxes, provide a family service, indoor party center. My business will be lost, not only because of inaction by Fed and state, but I couldn't even get my application submitted for PPP or Save a Small Business Grant. And you just have to wonder how many businesses are just absolutely being lost. How do you extrapolate that out in data? How do you take that human story and all of the jobs lost and the lost, grants and mortgages and extrapolate that into a trend line?
I think we can only do our best on a program like this to tell the stories behind the economic data, Tom. Clearly, for a small business, it's so difficult. And for anyone listening that's run a small business, this will really resonate with you. You always pay yourself last. This is something that John Tucker was talking about a little bit earlier on this morning, and it really touched me too, because I've been through this. I know how it works. If you run a small business, you will pay your staff until you literally can no longer borrow the money to do it. You will always pay yourself last if there's any money left whatsoever. And who will you prioritize? Everybody else but you. And that's the personal story behind small businesses that I don't think gets told enough. The last thing we want to do, Tom, is come out the other side of this without the small businesses that were there before.
Well, they are the backbone. I mean, President Reagan figured that out politically, and there's no question statistically small business has a massive impact on the American thought. Julia Coronado joins us now with Macro Policy Perspective. Julia, I look at what John and Lisa are talking about here in the urgency of it. Okay, there's an urgency. What can the Fed do next? How do they overlay on Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, DE? I mean, what's the next step for the Fed?
Well, we just saw some indications overnight or yesterday that they're working on expanding the money for municipal governments and reaching a broader set than they initially announced with the first facility, which excluded a lot of the smaller state and local governments. And Tom, that is where time is of the essence. We're already seeing numerous layoff announcements from state and local governments because they face balanced budget requirements, and their tax revenues are plummeting. And those are the kinds of jobs that we also need to keep.
And John, what's so important about this is again, it's the Fed coming to the rescue of a legislative system that's just not working.
Well, everyone aggressively trying to build out all of these programs. Julie, the good news is this money got out, and it got out quickly. I was one of the skeptics who thought there might be some problems getting this money distributed through the banks to the small businesses. It looks like that happened really quickly. What we got wrong was just how much money we would need. And they've topped it up again. Potentially that gets passed today. What are the limitations, just the constraints of making a program like this open-ended? Just saying it's not first come, first served. It's whoever needs it, whoever qualifies, receives it.
Well, you need the political will, and I think Tom put his finger on it. We see too many frictions. We've seen actually political will come together really quickly, relative to the dysfunction that we were seeing before. But that's still not going to be enough. In terms of keeping these small businesses afloat, we're probably just meeting that first wave of demand with this additional tranche that they're going to pass this week. We're going to need more. If you want this to be open-ended, if you really want to keep those businesses open over the next months, you have to have the political will to let that money flow. And these are big numbers. They are shocking numbers, but that's what it takes to what Chair Powell said, and Vice Chair Clarida said, to build the bridge to the other side of this pandemic. And that's what's going to be required. Just let that money flow for now, and then we'll worry about it later on.
Shocking numbers when it comes to the money necessary to plug the hole. Also shocking numbers when we get the unemployment filings, which we've been getting every Thursday and are just heartbreaking in their scope and depth. And there's a question, how many of these jobs will actually come back? And it's embedded in the small business question. How many of these small businesses can come back if they do become insolvent in this period of time?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question. And we know this is where what we economists know for sure is that when you break that bond between employer and employee, it takes time to rebuild. So the focus has been on keeping that bond intact. You know, businesses may have to put their employees on furlough or temporary layoff, but you don't want to break that bond. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing with the claims numbers, they're just so astronomical, there will be some breakage. And so I don't see a V-shaped recovery in the cards. But if we continue with a forceful policy response, at least we can get the recovery underway, you know, in the second half of the year.
If you're just joining us worldwide, Julia Coronado with this macro policy perspectives. Julia, on the inflation, disinflation, deflation dynamic, my reading of history is there's always an underestimation of lack of demand, down go prices. Is that what we're going to see, a more persistent disinflation? Is it going to be more English-like than what Americans perceive?
I think deflation is a real risk right now. And the oil market is just one of the canaries in the coal mine, but we saw a decline in core consumer prices in March. That was for March. We haven't even seen April yet. And, you know, it's funny because we're fielding so many questions about inflation sort of over the medium term, given all the money that's being printed around the world. And I think that's a fair question. But in the near term, we're going to see disinflation at a minimum and potentially deflation outright, maybe even more so than we saw in 2008 when it didn't go down as much as we might have expected. I think there are forces at play here that are breaking that stickiness we have tended to see. The speed of this is breaking the stickiness in price setting, and we may very well see outright declines in prices and maybe even outright declines in wages. So I think the speed of this is shifting the norms that we've gotten used to.
I think we can all imagine, Julia, what's happening on the demand side. What does the supply side look like as we work our way out of this?
Well, that's an excellent question. And again, the oil market is one small example of this, right? Look at the breakage in that production supply chain and how that's rippling through the prices that we're seeing. You know, again, the longer this goes on, the more at risk pretty critical supply chains in food, in production of manufactured goods and medicines, et cetera. And you know, we're not talking about just restarting a particular state or the United States. We're talking about restarting the global economy, reconnecting those supply chains. And you have to imagine there's going to be some frictions and bottlenecks and unexpected developments along the way.
Julia Coronado, always great to get your thoughts on this program and appreciate them this morning. I hope you and yours are doing very well. Let's get you some headlines, some news worldwide, shall we? Let's catch up with Michael Barr. Hello, Michael.
Hello, John, Lisa, Tom. The Trump administration and congressional leaders insist a final deal is in reach on an aid package for small businesses that could exceed $450 billion. But both sides are struggling for days to push an agreement across the finish line. Businesses suffer from a coronavirus-impaired economy. President Donald Trump says he hopes to see a Senate vote today. Most of the funding would go to replenish a payroll loan program that's out of money. Additional help would be given to hospitals, and billions more would be spent to boost testing for the virus. New York City won't allow public events in June, including 3 of the city's major annual celebrations: the National Puerto Rican Day Parade, the Celebrate the Israel Day Parade, and then the Pride Parade on the 50th anniversary. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio says it's painful but necessary. De Blasio also says President Trump needs to be careful with this push to reopen the American economy.
The president needs to focus on getting us the testing so we can make sure we beat back this disease once and for all. He needs to focus on the stimulus that will help cities and states back on their feet. He's doing this kind of false optimism acting like it's going to be easy to come back. It's not going to be easy, but we will do it. But I'll tell you, if we jump the gun, we're going to regret it.
De Blasio says the president, quote, should kiss his re-election goodbye if he thinks he's going to be able to convince to the American people to want 4 more years of a guy who can't even get the basics right. President Trump announced late last night on Twitter that he is suspending immigration into the U.S. because of the coronavirus. He gave no specifics on how it would work. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Language matters in times like this, so let me distinguish between the words used by the White House right now and the words used by Senator Schumer. Senator Schumer saying the deal has been reached on interim stimulus. The White House, Tom, an official for the White House saying a deal on relief loans is very close. Very close versus reach. Just still a little bit of daylight there. I'm hoping we get this done, but just still, it's worth pointing out, just a little bit of daylight between the two sides.
A little bit of daylight. This out of Dubai, our wonderful office in Dubai on Riyadh. Saudi ready to join OPEC Plus for more measures for oil stability. There'll be more news further.
Build out storage, maybe.
I don't know.
You know what, Tom? On the US side, I wonder what happens here, Lisa. There was some murmurings of this over the last couple of weeks, and I think it was mentioned yesterday as well, whether they could actually block imported crude or potentially put tariffs on it, curb it somehow, to really make sure that if there was any demand, the only demand that there would be for U.S. crude.
Well, the concern is that there are a number of tankers that are actually coming from the Middle East with oil full, heading toward through the Gulf of Mexico towards some of these oil-rich states. And the concern is, what will that do if they actually try to unload that oil? And what if you keep those ships in the water? I mean, the physical aspects of this, just mind-boggling.
Crude still getting absolutely hammered. We're down by 19% on Brent. We're down $5 on a session to $20.61. A ton of attention on the May contract in the US. I can tell you the June contract is getting smacked around now too. Ahead of the opening bell, 47 minutes away, we look like this for equity futures. We dip lower. We're down by 52 points on the S&P 500. We are negative 1.85%. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. You know how if you have a mortgage, you can now call your servicer and ask to skip your monthly payments because of the COVID-19 pandemic? Well, apparently about 6% of mortgage holders have already done this, and that is leaving mortgage servicers and some originators holding the hot potato. And now a trade group of some of the biggest mortgage lenders is asking for help. Wells Fargo, Quicken, and others say there is an urgent need for the Fed to provide liquidity for loan servicing companies. The Housing Policy Council says borrowers skipping payments on recently completed mortgages or refis is causing what it calls significant market distress. And the group says Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac may not agree to back those loans, and that could leave the originators and servicers stuck with losses. The group is also asking the Fed to set up a mortgage facility to support liquidity for Fannie and Freddie backed loans. And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Connecting. Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to national lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and oil does remain in focus after May contracts expiring today. Plunged at the start of the week, taking crude below zero for the first time in history. Right now, those contracts for May are still in negative territory. They're at minus $4.50 a barrel. The June contract is at $15.68, and Brent is at $20.56 a barrel. Futures are also lower. S&P futures down 51 points. Dow futures down 537, and NASDAQ futures down 75. The DAX in Germany is down 3.25%. 10-year Treasury up 19/32, yield 0.54%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.18%. COMEX gold is down 2.1%, down $36.80 at $16.74.40 an ounce. The euro 1.0831 against the dollar. British pound 1.2292, and the yen is at 107.46. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Lisa.
Karen, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. We say good morning to all of you. Good conversations today on oil, and we've looked at the short term, the nitty gritty movement of the June contract down. Finally, Brent comes in, joining West Texas Intermediate. All of that's great, but there's the bigger picture, and no one is more qualified to speak of this than Javier Blas, as Lisa mentioned, our chief energy correspondent, but far more than that, attuned to the global conversation. Javier, thank you so much for taking time. Tell us how OPEC reacts to this. We just saw the Saudi headline of some kind of discussions. They must be absolutely shell-shocked. What is the next step for OPEC? What is the next step for the Kingdom of Saud?
I think that you are absolutely right, Tom. It's a statement of shock in Saudi Arabia. The cabinet issuing a statement just minutes ago saying that they are discussing efforts to achieve oil market stability. Of course, it's about efforts and not about actions. OPEC, I think, is going to have to sit down and sit quietly until May the 1st, because I have been speaking to officials and they know that they can do very, very little over the next few days, even in the next few weeks, to resolve the oversupply. That's going to have to be resolved by private producers shutting in their production, because the production cuts of OPEC are going to be coming not until May. And even so, they're going to take time, because there's barrels of oil that they are producing in May, and they don't arrive the coast of the United States, of Europe, until the middle of the month, even late May, even the beginning of June. So for now, until probably mid of May, we are absolutely left to the basic laws of supply and demand. And with that is doing the work, the only way that the market can resolve the current problem of massive oversupply and historic oversupply is by crashing prices to zero or going below that and force producers to stop pumping.
So just from a technical perspective, how long does it take for Saudi Arabia, for example, to turn the taps off? And have they started already?
Well, they will start on May the 1st. It's a gradual process. I believe that probably they have already making the preparations to slow down the production and go to the new level of 8.5 million barrels a day. The main problem is that you have a lot of oil on the water that has been already shipped, and that oil takes between 40 and 50 days to reach from the oil terminal of Ras Tanura in Saudi Arabia to the coast of Texas and Louisiana, and also the coast of California. And that oil that is on the water, that you cannot really turn it around. Those vessels will continue going through the Pacific and the Atlantic, depending on the destination, until they reach the coast, and then, you cannot do nothing about it.
If it comes to a halt, Javier, if there's a crater in income, what is the resiliency of the different oil players you speak to every day? How resilient can they be as far out as June?
Well, I think that the most resilient one will be the Emirates in the Gulf, United Arab Emirates and Kuwait, probably the deepest pockets among the OPEC producers. Then you have other countries that they are rich but with large populations and big budgets to cover, like Saudi Arabia. And then on the really weakest spot are some of the African nations, Nigeria, Angola, and then, of course, Venezuela. For those producers, they are really on their knees, and they're going to be in deep trouble if this continues more than a few weeks.
Javier, there seems to be a hope built into futures markets, a hope that is rapidly getting beaten out of people today, at least if we look at the June contract, that the supply-demand dynamic will be better come next month when we have the same contract roll that we just experienced with the May contract for WTI. Are you talking to people who think that hope is misplaced and that we're going to see the same type of price action in the June contract?
Most of the physical oil traders that I speak, whether they're in Houston or here in Europe, believe that the June contract is going to also suffer a lot. We are still building inventories on a very rapid pace. Oil is flowing into Cushing, Oklahoma. That's the delivery point where the NYMEX WTI contract gets priced. Just get a sense. Over the last 3 weeks, oil has been flowing into Cushing, Oklahoma, population about 7,000 people, at a rate of 750,000 barrels a day. That's about what Belgium here in Europe consumes a day. So the same amount of oil that a medium-sized country in Europe consumes on a regular day is now going into Cushing and going into storage. And that's filling up. And when the time comes for the June contract to expire, there's going to be a lot more oil than is today. So the fundamentals of supply and demand in Cushing are going to be a lot worse, and probably the June contract is going to be suffering the same problems that we saw yesterday with May.
I look, Javier, at the struggle forward here, and I go back to the formative thing for me, which is Midland, Texas, of long ago and far away. How do you perceive big oil will work at this? I mean, I know you're not doing securities analysis, but how does European big oil or U.S. big oil adapt and adjust to all this?
Well, I think for the time being, what we have seen is that the way to adapt through it has been going into a survival mode. They have cut and slashed spending like probably they have never done before. They are taking a massive amount of debt. We have seen all the big oil companies from Shell to ExxonMobil issuing bonds in huge quantities to build reserves to try to weather the storm. I think that the key one is what is the shape of the recovery. If the recovery is quick and on a V shape, then a big oil will be okay. But if you hear some of the airline executives, we are saying that they don't see much recovery in airline traveling for a year, then you have to start wondering what is the recovery of the whole oil demand and what is the recovery of the oil market. And in that case, the outlook for big oil is a lot different. And one thing that we need to remember is if the outlook for oil is bad, the outlook for natural gas and particularly LNG is even worse. And all of these companies have invested in LNG significantly over the last few years.
Well, Javier, this has been wonderful. Congratulations to you and Will Kennedy and all of our team for just terrific coverage. An historic day yesterday for oil. It continues today. What you need to know is Brent has joined the fall in American oil. Brent crude down to $20, $21 a barrel. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Shake it up. Dance all night. Dance all night.
Business is. Did you know that players of People's Postcode Lottery have raised over £500 million for charities and good causes? They've also won £47 million in prizes so far this year, and it could be your postcode next. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 23rd of April to play in the May draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus, conditions apply, play responsibly.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Typical Danny. Yesterday was just one of those days. I was running late to dinner, so I had to do my makeup on the bus. But my favourite shirt got ruined when I spilt my foundation all over it. What a mare. But no worries. Just one wash and my clothes will smell perf with Surf. Surf gives you long-lasting fragrance with natural essential oils. Find your fragrance in Surf's laundry range.
This is a message from the government. Coronavirus is a national emergency, life-threatening for people of all ages everywhere in the UK. To help save lives, stay home. Only go outside for food, health reasons, daily exercise or to work, but only if you cannot work from home. Stay home. Anyone can get it and anyone can spread it. Coronavirus. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
If you've used TuneIn much, you probably already know how to favorite your top stations and podcasts for quick access. But did you know you can organize your favorites too? Under your favorites page on the TuneIn app, hold and drag the stations to arrange the order to your liking.
I'm Mel Kiper Jr., and if you can't watch me break down all the NFL draft picks, then listen to me with ESPN Radio on TuneIn. Just search NFL Draft to enjoy listening to comprehensive NFL draft coverage.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Users in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
Once we get through coronavirus, it's very supportive and very stimulative.
Central banks themselves got caught hostage by markets.
Finance.
OPEC Plus is at war with itself.
We know we can create America's energy independence again.
Investment.
The market's anticipating the rate getting very close to zero in fairly short order.
Volatility is back, so that's going to make for more cautious trading.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. We welcome all of you. Bloomberg Surveillance. Interesting markets here. Some real risk-off feel here. Yields coming in. Equities coming in as well. It's absolutely extraordinary as the oil story continues this morning. Paul, that was something yesterday afternoon, wasn't it?
It really was, Tom. I mean, we've never seen that before, and it just highlighted for people, those people that weren't really paying attention, the real issue of facing the global energy markets, global oil markets in terms of supply and demand, just so incredibly, out of askew, and that's just creating some huge dislocations in the market.
And we see it spill over. Futures negative 55, Dow futures negative 572, 22,916 on Dow futures. S&P futures well under 2,800, 27.51. And the VIX over 2 days, I'd rather go out 2 days than not 1 day up 3 figures. Out 2 days, we're up a solid 8 figures on the VIX, 47.47. So there's a meaningful adjustment going on in the yield market. It was actually pretty resilient early this morning, and that shifted 2 hours ago, 0.185 on the 2-year yield. 10-year bond comes in with a vengeance, really breaching through some support, 0.5472 on the 10-year. That's not down to recent lows. We saw that a number of weeks ago, but still, that's a very low level, 1.13 in the 30-year bond. Before we get to David Wilson, in oil, a negative statistic on the contract out the door today for West Texas. Right now, under 16 is the June contract on West Texas. And Brent crude, the really headline story today is Brent crude resilient and separate yesterday, for the most part, cratered earlier this morning. And this is down to new lows, $19.83 a barrel. And with that gloom, we bring in the always cheerful David Wilson.
Well, it can't be cheerful when it comes to the energy stocks today, given what we're seeing in the oil markets. You look at ExxonMobil, it's down 3% in early trading. Occidental Petroleum down 4%. And the oil services company Schlumberger down 4.5%. So lots of declines. One area where you're seeing gains, though, companies that own oil tankers. They're higher on anticipation of greater demand for what's known as floating storage. We're talking about companies like DHT Holdings. The ticker is DHT. It's up 7.5%. Nordic American Tankers, ticker NAT, one of the most active stocks in early trading. It's up about 16%. And TK, ticker letters T and K, up 19%. So that's definitely an area that's benefiting from what we're seeing in the oil markets. Then you have Dow earnings to talk about. We'll start with IBM. It's down 5%. First quarter revenue fell more than analysts were expecting in a Bloomberg survey. And the computer company withdrew its full-year forecast, as many others have been doing lately in light of the coronavirus. Coca-Cola is off about 0.5%. The soft drink maker said April sales volume is down 25%, mainly because of a drop in sales away from home. Think restaurants. They're not open, so it's understandable. First quarter volume fell 1%, though profit and revenue beat projections. Travelers is down 4%. First quarter earnings that the insurer trailed estimates. Costs related to natural disasters rose 73% on a pre-tax basis to $333 million. And the coronavirus pandemic led to charges totaling $68 million. Looking beyond the Dow, you've got Lockheed Martin up 1.5%. The defense contractor reported first quarter earnings and sales that beat estimates and maintained its full-year profit forecast. Isn't quite sure how the coronavirus is going to affect business, nonetheless reaffirming that full-year projection. HCA Healthcare is down 3%. The hospital owner suspended its dividend and withdrew full-year forecast. Now, first quarter results showed an earnings gauge fell 13%, even as revenue rose. And you're seeing declines among financial companies. Synchrony Financial, which is a credit card issuer, down 2%. Spending by its customers tumbled 26% in the last 2 weeks of March. And first quarter revenue trailed the average estimate by the most since Synchrony went public in 2014. Fifth Third Bancorp down 2.5%. The bank's first quarter provision for loan losses jumped sevenfold from a year ago. Earnings came up short of estimates, though revenue came out ahead. And Comerica's down 5.5%. The bank withdrew full-year forecast and raised its first quarter loan loss provision to $411 million from last year's $13 million. And I got one more for you, Tom. I know it's a favorite of yours. Beyond Meat.
Oh, boy.
Up 12%.
Oh, my word.
The maker of plant-based meat substitutes will enter China through a partnership with Starbucks.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. That's a name from the past, Tom.
Everything, Paul, feels like the past, and this, not to make light of the huge courage of our many first responders in many ways to this, but it's amazing, Paul, how you look back, 10 weeks? It's like, I remember when.
But the world has changed, Tom. I think it's going to be changed for some time. One of the areas that we're focusing on, Tom, is the kind of the economic impact. And we've seen the jobless claims surge to over 22 million. We know there's going to be a dire impact on 2Q GDP. Also, the system, Tom, is kind of bracing for what is expected to be a rising wave of bankruptcies. And the question is, can the system deal with it? Is there ways to help some of these businesses? To bring us up to date, we welcome Leslie Pappas. She's a Bloomberg Law correspondent. Leslie, thanks so much for joining us. Again, we're bracing for just some dire economic consequences from this coronavirus. Give us a sense of how the wave of bankruptcies is likely to develop in this country.
Well, hi, thanks for having me. Of course, the short answer is nobody knows exactly when this surge is going to come, but the bankruptcy courts are expecting a wave to come in. They're not actually expecting the consumer bankruptcies to be filed right away. Those are probably going to happen down the road when stimulus checks run out and the bills start piling up. But they are expecting that within possibly as soon as a couple months, or it could be as far as 9 months, they're going to start seeing an uptick in Chapter 11 and commercial filings.
Is bankruptcy now the same as it was in 2008, back when we were talking about this the last time? Is the process the same?
There's differences for. The process is basically the same. What the bankruptcy courts are worried about, though, is that the Chapter 11 filings, the tools that are used aren't going to work if all of the filings come in all at once. In 2008, if you look at the numbers, that there was an increase in Chapter 11 filings starting in 2008, but the numbers really got big actually in 2009. So it's a sort of a longer tail, that comes out, whereas this has been very sudden, it's been very sharp, and there's just a huge amount of uncertainty. Nobody knows how long these shutdowns are going to last. And so you have suddenly all at once businesses in all different industries just being choked. They don't have any cash, they don't have any revenues, they don't have any money coming in, and they can't open their stores. They can't, for a normal Chapter 11 filing, one of the things you do is you start selling your assets. You hold an auction. You look for somebody to possibly buy your company or spin off a unit or something like that. What if you can't find any buyers? What if you can't, if you're not going to get any bidders to put up a bid at auction, you can't hold an auction. If you can't get bankruptcy financing, how are you going to even put together a prepackaged bankruptcy? So that's the thing that professionals are worried about now, is simply, how are the tools of bankruptcy going to work if they're just flooded? In the same way hospitals are being, are flooded by patients. Something that works in normal times, how is it going to work today?
So, Leslie, what's the sense from the stimulus that we've seen and the stimulus that we're expected to get maybe today or tomorrow? Is that going to have a material impact on kind of maybe flattening the curve a little bit in terms of these bankruptcies?
I think the question overall is just is it going to be enough? And is handing out money really the way to do it, or are there other ways to maybe prevent companies from sort of getting sick in the first place if they were a healthy company? We're not talking about the ones that were about to file anyhow, but so like some people are suggesting, how about just let's put things on hold a little bit. You've got a contract, everybody's going to be in default. Everybody is going to be, if they don't have revenue coming in, they're not going to be able to repay their loans. Can we just kind of take a deep breath, renegotiate contracts for a short time, have a standstill agreement.
Yep.
Just sort of stop for a bit. There are people. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that makes sense, and we'll have to see how this plays out. And unfortunately, I think as you were suggesting, Leslie, there will be a wave, and the question is, can the courts handle it? And we're going to have to see how this plays out. Hopefully, the stimulus will help out some of these small, mid-sized businesses. Leslie Pappas, Bloomberg Law correspondent, and thank you so much for joining us. Right now, let's get world and national headlines with Michael Barr. Michael, what do you have?
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Tom. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said this morning congressional leaders and the Trump administration reached a tentative deal on an emergency economic rescue package and will be passed this afternoon. The measure would replenish a tapped-out small business aid program. It will also provide money for coronavirus testing in overwhelmed hospitals. Schumer told CNN they're still dotting the I's and crossing the T's, but every major issue was resolved. A Trump administration official said today the sides were very close to a deal. The states believe the Trump administration has made it clear they will largely be on their own suppressing the coronavirus pandemic. Bloomberg's Martin DeCarroll reports on one state's plan.
Maryland is a small state, but its leaders are proving effective. It obtained 500,000 coronavirus tests from South Korea and is on its way to hiring 750 more contact tracers.
These are people who work in local health departments. They may be working in foodborne outbreaks.
Fran Phillips is Maryland's Deputy Secretary of Health. She says every state agency was forced to focus on the virus, as Governor Larry Hogan told his cabinet at the outset.
We need to work as if we are completely on our own.
And in something that may bode well for the rest of a country that chafes against government intrusion, she says very few Maryland residents have objected to quarantine orders after contact tracers got in touch. Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
President Trump said he'll sign an executive order temporarily suspending immigration into the U.S. as the country tries to contain the spread of the coronavirus. Trump made the announcement on Twitter late last night. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Tom.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. We've been expecting this. It is historic for the exchange-traded fund experiment, the oil fund. United States Oil Fund, they've issued all their remaining registered shares. I'm going to be very clear here. The press release is substantial, but the first sentence is rushed and an incomplete sentence, so I need to be very careful. They say they have issued all of their remaining registered shares. They said yesterday it would announce through a current report they will temporarily suspend the issuance of additional creation baskets. That is a huge deal as we see oil plunge. Please stay with us. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene worldwide. This is Bloomberg.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Influential
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £14 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body length.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Typical Danny. Yesterday was just one of those days. I was running late to dinner, so I had to do my makeup on the bus. But my favourite shirt got ruined when I spilt my foundation all over it. What a mare. But no worries. Just one wash and my clothes will smell perf with Surf. Surf gives you long-lasting fragrance with natural essential oils. Find your fragrance in Surf's laundry range.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stock index futures are retreating, along with stocks in Europe, as chaos in the oil market continues. Treasuries and the dollar are gaining as concerns over stability in North Korea add to investor headaches. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 52 points this morning. Dow futures down 548 and NASDAQ futures down 73. The DAX in Germany is down 3 1/3%. 10-year Treasury up 19/30 seconds, yield 0.54%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil, checking the May contract right now, it's minus $3.70 a barrel. The June contract at $14.21. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Thank you so much, Karen. Paul, I want to get through this quickly and get to our good conversation on the state of the pandemic, and that is a pandemic in oil. To see USO halted trading is something.
It really is, Tom, and it just kind of goes to, it wasn't just the technical issues yesterday impacting the May futures. I mean, we're seeing it across the curve here. So it just highlights, once again, just a fundamental problem in the economics, in the supply and demand of crude on a global basis right now. It's really a significant issue for oil producers and consumers as well.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Still an unfolding story. We continue our discussion from the Johns Hopkins University School of Nursing. Michelle Patch joins us as she speaks about the health workers of this pandemic.
All of our healthcare workers are working around the clock right now to try and fight against this virus. And what we've seen after other disasters, like I'm thinking, for instance, hurricanes or tornadoes, or the tragedies that we all experienced around 9/11, there are these fairly predictable phases that we go through collectively. And it starts with the impact of the disaster when it first hits. We're going to experience fear and confusion, right? This sounds very familiar to us, right? Difficulty believing it's even happening. And we make extraordinary efforts to protect ourselves and safeguard ourselves and our families. And then we move into what we see as kind of this heroic phase when we have a great deal of activity happening, our adrenaline is surging, we're all ramping up to help and it moves quickly into what is called by many as this honeymoon phase. We're bonding back together, and disaster assistance is coming online and is active. We're optimistic. We're going to get through this. We're going to get back to normal quickly. And unfortunately, that doesn't last long. And we tend to move into disillusionment. We realize what those limitations of our disaster assistance is, and we've been working so hard, it becomes extraordinarily exhausting physically and mentally, and negative responses to those stressors start to come out. When that demand for help starts outstripping our resources, it makes sense. We feel lost. We're abandoned. We feel angry, right? And that can take months to years before moving into reconstruction or recovery phase.
So, Professor, what is the number one advice to actually try and bolster each other, but also for people on the front line in this very difficult time?
Sure. Right now, we're somewhere between a honeymoon and disillusionment, right? And we're kind of moving back and forth between those. We have many who are really maintaining an optimistic stance, and communities working together or providing whatever they can to fight this virus. We're also seeing increasing conflict and voices of those wanting to move on, to open back up to businesses. We have those who are tired and angry and worried, and they worry they don't have what they have to safely continue, and they're physically and mentally exhausted. They realize very much so that this is a marathon. So bolstering each other will require actively caring for ourselves and each other, continuing to advocate for increasing supplies, increasing testing, supporting our leaders developing vaccines. But it's okay to know it's okay to not be okay right now. Continue to reach out to others from a safe distance. Take advantage of our electronic devices to connect, and really watch out for our friends, our families. Look to spiritual advisors, therapists, and it's okay to breathe. It's okay to cry, and to keep moving forward.
Michelle, one final question, if I could. The president overnight decided he's going to put out an executive order limiting or banning immigration into the United States. He talks about the threats of the virus, the invisible enemy that's out there. I was thunderstruck to learn that 29% of doctors and 23% of nurses are immigrants. How do those nurses become nurses in the United States? Do they just show up and they're hired, or is there licensing? How does that process work at your Johns Hopkins University?
From time immemorial, we have relied very heavily on a wonderful workforce that comes from everywhere across the globe. As we have individuals come to our country who have practiced nursing in other countries and want to continue to do that here for us in the United States, we do have, each state has a different board of nursing that provides licensure for those individuals. They will have to take a licensure exam to show that they have that background. And there are also opportunities at various colleges and universities in the event that they may be lacking something that was needed for that licensure, that they can take that. There also are many programs that encourage folks to come from other countries and help support them in that transition. It's worrisome to have limitations at this point when we so desperately need folks on the front line to turn away those who have those skills and resources.
Michelle Patch, Johns Hopkins University. Paul, markets are really quite weaker. Let's get to USO if we can. And we do this with the yield in 6 basis points, 0.55%, and futures down 50, negative 50, Dow futures negative 537. Paul, you and I have known this for years. Someday a tangible ETF would not be able to affect some form of business. It's finally occurred.
It's finally occurred here, Tom, and it's taken this extraordinary dislocation in the global energy markets to kind of get us here. So it's really going to be a test for the trading in and around the energy space, Tom. I think a lot of investors have relied upon ETFs, so it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. And we've got a lot of volatility even in the June futures contract for WTI.
Well, June's futures contract 14.23. Let me make this clear, folks. Ugly morning 3 hours ago. A nice rebound, some stability across the three oil prices. And with this news from USO, we see a rollover again. This is the ETF that is looking forward to taking in no more business, and shares have been halted right now. The new June West Texas Intermediate 14.42. Brent crude is coming. That's the headline story today. The global oil price is coming as well under $20 a barrel. Extraordinary. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Within your soul, and it looks like I am the last to know. I hear you've never felt so.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stop.
There are two sides to every story. From the epic tales of love and loss comes the huge new steady rolling single. When the Judgment Comes, the Elise Rich remix. Download When the Judgment Comes, the Elise Rich remix, or stream wherever good music lives.
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £14 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The pressure washer that means your patio is barbecue ready. The 4K projector that brings the thrill of the cinema to you. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of your leisure time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Typical Danny. Imagine trying to unwind at a spa weekend and you wind up getting your mud pack all over your fave personalised dressing gown. But no worries, just one wash and my clothes will smell perf with Surf. Surf gives you long-lasting fragrance with natural essential oils. Find your fragrance in Surf's laundry range.
Casting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
And good morning. I'm Karen Moscow along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. The S&P 500 lower at the open, down 1.7%, down 47 points at 2775. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 2.1%, down 503 points at 23,138. And the Nasdaq's down 1.2% or 103 points to 84.57. 10-year Treasury up 17 seconds, yield 0.55%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. Checking NYMEX crude oil. Taking a look at the May contract, it has turned positive. It's at $1.75 a barrel. And taking a look at the June contract, it's at $14.83 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 1.8%, down $30.10 at $16.81 an ounce. And Paul and Tom.
Karen, thanks so much. This is fascinating, folks. An exchange-traded fund is a portfolio of something. And Paul, for you to bring in our esteemed expert on this, is the broad idea of financials, which are intangible, and they're ETFs made up of tangible assets.
Tangible assets like barrels of WTI crude oil. Eric Balchunas, he's a senior ETF analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence and truly one of the most knowledgeable people on Wall Street on this whole ETF complex. So, Eric, talk to us about this USO ETF. What is the news today and how important is it?
Right. So USO it trades like equity, but it holds oil futures. So what's going on now is something that's happened twice in its past, in 2009 and 2015. When oil goes real low to the point where it makes like the CBS nightly news, what happens is a lot of tourists, we call them, come, like my dad, right? He'll text me, how can I play the oil rebound?
Oh, man, blaming his
and
dad.
You'll see a lot of these people come from the outside looking to play this huge rebound. They're like, oh, it can't go lower, I'll come in. So a lot of the money that you've seen come in, it's gone from about a normal $2 billion in assets. That's what it lives at normally. When locals use this very well. They trade it. They know what they're doing. They know what contango means. But again, every now and then oil gets so low it gets to be a popular, crowded trade. And now you've got it up to $4.1 billion, and it got too big. Now it's got to halt creations, probably, I'm guessing, for a couple days. But long story short, it's become like an overcrowded trade, and because nobody who's retail knows how to use the futures market, and nobody wants to buy actual barrels of oil, USO becomes like a hot property.
Okay, what's the history of that $2 billion add-on, which is mostly individual investors climbing on board? What's your experience of how big their losses will be?
Well, here's what's going to happen probably, right? Let's just assume that at some point oil rebounds, right? In 2016, look, USO's down today, so they could lose a lot more, but let's just assume at some point the bottom is in. In 2016, crude was up 45%, and this is the same situation, but USO only got 6% of that because the roll costs are so brutal in this thing. So this is the problem, and this is why...
Hold on. This, folks, what you just heard there, Paul, this is like a public service from the genius Balchunas. Slow down, Eric, and explain to us again how a 45% gain, I get it, turns into a 6% gain.
Right, so the price of a barrel of oil goes up 45%, but you're in the futures market. You're holding the oil, right? So the ETF holds the near-month contract, and everybody knows that nobody wants oil delivered to their house. So the contract decays as it gets closer to expiration. So the ETF has to roll from this month to the next one to keep exposure, and you almost always pay more. And if you do that over and over and over, you end up with a 30% roll cost a year.
So, Eric, who typically uses USO? Are this people looking to hedge physical positions, or is it just speculators? Who typically trades in these ETFs?
So I find it's probably a lot of day traders. There's not a ton of institutional ownership of the fund. So it's probably day traders, maybe small hedge funds, people who just don't want to mess with futures. They like the equity quality of USO. And they're locals, and you can tell by the way it turns over, they know how to trade it. They use it as a hot potato. They do mean reversion. It's fine. It's a nice little community of people who use it. It's just when it gets to the point where oil becomes like major news that you get these outsiders, and I wonder how many are going to find out the hard way that this is the case. I tend to tell people to maybe look at the equity market, like look at XOP or XLE. And those companies tend to move with oil to a degree, and you don't get the weird derivative action over there. But then again, you don't get the pop you get when oil goes up over there.
Eric Balchunas, thank you so much for that. We appreciate you coming on and giving us some enlightenment on USO. Bloomberg Intelligence Senior ETF Analyst Eric Balchunas. I'm looking at USO right now, Tom. It has traded. It is trading right now about $3.02 per unit. That's down about 19% today. So just extraordinary movement there.
I got ducky bumps because this is what we want, folks. We go from an ETF expert to one Barry Ritholtz, who's the financial planning expert. Barry, futures are just tough, aren't they, for people? I mean, retail and futures is a toxic combination, isn't it?
For sure. It reminds us of two perennial pieces of advice that everybody has to remember. The first is know what you're investing in. Don't just think you're buying an ETF. You have to understand what you're holding, whether it's oil futures or VIX futures. Remember the notes last year that blew up. And I'm reminded of David Letterman when he used to do his stupid human tricks. We're professionals. Don't try this at home. That certainly is true about futures.
So, Barry, what do you typically, when you have a client come to you and say, I really want to get long oil here, I really like where it is right here, where do you usually point them to?
A person like that, we usually say, you're fired. We can't help you. Go find someone else who will incinerate your cash for you, because we want nothing to do with that. Sometimes the best thing you could do for a person is not get in their way and not be part of their own self-destruction. Look, professionals blow up on a regular basis. Trading oil and trading futures, incredibly difficult. So many different moving parts. Geopolitics, interest rates, value of the dollar. This is not something you dabble with. You want to dabble? Take $1,000 and go play blackjack in Vegas. And when the $1,000 is gone, it's gone. But don't mess with your real money with this sort of stuff. It is not for the home viewer.
Yeah, Barry, let's review this again, what Eric said, and you can do it with a different view than Eric, which is great. I'm going to buy oil at X dollars a barrel. It's going to go up 45%, but if the futures roll, I'm only going to be up 6%. How can that be?
Well, because when you buy futures, you are not buying a commodity. You are buying a financially engineered product that has an interest in a commodity. And that is an enormous difference, and people forget that. So you want to own some oil, and if you want to really get a feel of that, Tracy Alloway wrote a delightful piece a few years ago about buying a single barrel of oil and taking delivery for it. It's absolutely recommended reading. But anytime you're in the futures market, you are playing with engineered products, and they have very quirky characteristics, including time decay.
This is what surveillance is all about, folks. Eric Balchunas and Barry Ritholtz together on this oil conundrum. Mr. Ritholtz, thank you so much. We've been doing this each and every day as he and his city live this crisis. Here is the 109th mayor of New York.
I've been one for someone. By April 10th, we were still seeing an increase in the number of people who need them each day, 75 a day. But it was slowing, thank God. Now, today, it's actually leveled off. And we hope to see a situation where it really declines consistently, the need each day. But having gone through that terrifying moment, I can tell you I am determined to make sure that New York City never, ever is in a situation in the future where we need ventilators and we can't get them. We have to protect our people. And so these bridge ventilators that have been created are part of what will protect us now and into the future. This is something we now have that can never be taken away from us. This is something we make here that there's no one else in the world can deprive us of. We are now increasingly self-sufficient. We got a long way to go. But this is a remarkable achievement. You're going to hear from some of the people who made it happen. I want to tell you, these ventilators right now, ready to go, being moved into hospitals so they will all have a reserve that need them. FDA approved. And I want to thank the FDA. I want to take a moment. I always try and give credit where credit is due. Dr. Stephen Hahn,